The mainstream wants us to believe that the further we look back, the more archaic the civilizations were, the more primitive their methods of construction. But I think these megalithic marvels we see, there's a whole lot more going on. And he said at the right time on the solstice event, the sacred knowledge would basically be passed through your third eye, which would enable you to then approach the portal and enter. Some of the legends I'm tracking states that when these entities were alive, they were like oracles for the population to communicate with the gods. Was one of the original functions of these boxes not to house dead sacred bowls physically, but the bowl of the sky, meteorites from Taurus. So apparently the military now controls this site. Unless you've got real special access, nobody's allowed in. Is this depicting ancient knowledge of some kind of ancient levitation technology? On the south end of the cave, they found a 6'6" skeleton, very thick in proportion, and it had red hair. For the men being twice as tall and thick as the largest of our people, they measured one with another the height of 12 feet, which are representing the long ears with red hair. And this connects us to Easter Island and the Paracas with red hair. The further we look back, actually, the more advanced they were. They had a sacred knowledge that we've lost.
I mean, first off, what did you think of the vases in the other room?
Oh man, that was something to see.
Yeah.
That was a treat.
Crazy, right?
It was crazy. You know, I've seen a lot of vases traveling around in Egypt at the Louvre, but to hold them, to touch them, to pick them up and look under them, put my hands inside them, man, that was something.
Cool.
So thank you for that.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Well, awesome, man. Let's, why don't we do a quick introduction? Just let people know a little bit about yourself, tell them about your channel, you know, what it is that you do, and then we'll dive right into some content.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, I was always into history. My channel is now called Megalithic Marvels. I'm on YouTube and Spotify and all the places, but always into history. I was always amazed by pyramids growing up. Always intrigued by the Moai of Easter Island, Rapa Nui. And so that always just piqued my interest. And then as I got older, I remember one day, it was probably around 2012, I was doing a internet search. It's probably on my day off. I was searching for ancient ruins. And what really took me down the rabbit hole was that was the first time I'm Googling ancient ruins, and up pops these megalithic walls in Peru. Again, around 2012. And my first thought was, how have I never seen this before? And so that just blew my mind. How did I not read about this in history class? See this on even the History Channel back then so much. And so it sent me down a research trail, and eventually I wound up in Peru to see these and touch them myself and look at the elongated skulls. And that's when I knew, man, there is so much more going on with history than we've been told. And I came back from that first trip with all this footage, photographs, and I was like, I've got to do something with this, you know. And that was around 2016, I believe. And so I just kind of started a blog, megalithic.marvels.com, and that turned into a YouTube channel and Instagram. And I just realized there was such a hunger people had for this kind of knowledge and, you know, even photographs. And that was even back before all the reels and shorts, you know. And so stuff just started taking off, and I was having fun. You know, to me, that's a big part of it, is just having fun, traveling, and researching these incredible, as I call them, megalithic marvels.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah. And now 600,000 on YouTube, which, I mean, just after, you know, not that many years is really impressive. So you're putting out some phenomenal content, and I'm really looking forward to talking to you about it today. How many trips have you done down to Peru since then?
Oh man, since then, I think I've maybe been back about 4 times, and now I'm going every year. And so Peru's one of my most favorite places on the planet. There's so much to see. It's just endless megaliths, whether it's the big sites, as you know, in Cusco or Machu Picchu. But then I just love getting up in the highlands around Cusco and seeing and we can talk about this in the show, just the earth shaping, I call it, that I believe was made by ancient lost civilizations who possessed some form of lost ancient technology. So Peru's a wild place. To me, it's kind of the Wild West. It's the place you can go, and like I went to Chichen Itza around 2020. That was my last trip there, and it was amazing, but you couldn't even get up close to this stuff anymore. And it's way more recent than the megaliths we see in Peru, right? So for context, it's just so amazing that you can go to a place like Peru and get out there. Obviously, you want to be very careful to honor all these ancient sites and not mess with them, but to be able to, lightly put your hands on them and get up close is an experience.
Yeah, I was blown away by Peru and Cusco and just the whole Sacred Valley area. And it was like, I had high expectations going there, but to actually see it and check the stuff out. And then I was like, I was a little kid just videoing everything and, putting it all out there and mostly on X. And people were just like, still people just can't get enough of it because it's incredible. It's absolutely mind blowing. And the explanation of hammer and chisel, stone hammer to create these walls, it's one of the most ridiculous things that exists out there in terms of like explanation for what we see. And, you can just clearly see that there's some other method. Why has none of that been reproduced in modern times? Why can't we actually do that easily today if that's what they were doing? So, yeah, for me, it remains one of the biggest mysteries out there, and maybe we start with Peru and with the walls. What is your theory on how?
Wow. Well, let me start with a story.
Okay.
So like I said, I went down to Peru. My first trip was probably around 2017. And I was with a group of about 20, 25 people. And we're seeing all these incredible sites in Cusco, Sacsayhuaman, Machu Picchu, and we were up in the Sacred Valley. And most people go to the Sacred Valleys, to see Machu Picchu, Ollantaytambo, these incredible sites that feature what I would say are all 3 layers of different construction. And we can get into this legend of the Hanan Pacha in a bit that basically states, there was an ancient civilization built the foundations, a middle civilization built on top of that, and then lastly, you had the Inca building on top of that. So we're seeing all these sites and we're amazed. But then we go way off the beaten path into the Sacred Valley to this cave. And it's known by a couple names, Napa Waka or Napa Iglesia. And you go way off the beaten path. There's no other tour buses out here. And so the buses park and we follow these railroad tracks along this mountainous valley. And then we begin to hike up the side of this steep mountainous hill. And up in the distance, you can see this large cave. And so I'm just intrigued by this, and I'm noticing that there's Inca-style construction as we approach this cave way up in the distance. And I'm thinking, why are the Inca building here? And we soon found out. So you get up to this cave after this long, exhaustive hike, and you can see this cave is in the shape of it's almost trapezoidal. This cave appears to have been the ceiling artificially shaped to where it's like an inverted pyramid, or meant to be, and especially from the back when you're looking down. So we get up into this cave, and as you can see, there is this what looks like a console or altar at the front, and it's been precision shaped. It's got these protruding nubs coming out of it. Unfortunately, the top has been blown off, but according to some oral traditions, that was once had a giant puma face on the top. This was likely covered in gold. You can see the precision 90-degree angles. This thing it looks sci-fi, right? It looks futuristic.
Totally.
So we get into this cave. We're blown away seeing these megaliths with the console here in the front. And then as you pan to the right of the cave, you see what they call a portal. Some would say a stargate. And it's this like 5D layered, 5-layered precision cutout straight into the mountain. And you can see behind me there is a faux door or false door. I took some pictures up close of some of the angles, and it's literally like 5 different layers. And so we're in this cave, and we are just amazed. And we're exploring. And along with our group came this local shaman who was, I think he said he descended from the Inca, and so he knew all the oral traditions. And he was explaining to us how this is one of the holiest, most special sites of the Inca. And in fact, before we got into the cave, he made sure we were all brushed with his incense. He had these brushes, and he says, we don't want in any way offend the spirits. So we're like, cool. So we all go through his cleansing process. We enter the cave and examined it as I shared there. And then he starts explaining to us, why this place was so sacred to the Inca. And he says this was the place for getting the key. And basically he explained how during the solstice times, the winter solstice, the summer solstice, when the light was just right and the sunlight was hitting, the ancients would crouch down back at that console. You can go back to that, Ryan. And they would bend down facing it with their hands on the knobs there and their head placed towards the hole where it's right where it's being blown off. There's a hole. And he said at the right time on the solstice event, the sacred knowledge would basically be passed through your third eye, which would enable you to then, which would enable you to then approach the portal and basically enter, or he might have said travel to different locations. And so we're all amazed by this. The megaliths alone, right? Getting to see them up close is just an incredible experience. And then we're learning this deeper legend. And then he invites us all to sit around in the cave, and he pulls out a drum, and he says, I'm going to basically sing some ancient songs and beat on my drum, and I just want to invite you to meditate. So some people are, sitting in a receiving position. Others are just laying prostrate on the ground. And this shaman is just kind of tapping on his drum and chanting. And everything was peaceful for maybe 5 minutes or so. And, there's a gentle breeze kind of blowing through the cave. And it was just a real surreal experience until all of a sudden we hear this blood-curdling scream. And of course, our eyes come wide open. And there's a guy in our group who is kind of sitting closer to the portal faux door. And this guy is flailing his arms around, yelling, and you can tell he's scared to death. And so several of us approach him, rush to help him. Some people, is he having a heart attack? What's going on? And this guy was, shaking with fear. And so when he started to settle down and, breathe, we're like, what's going on? How can we help you? And he proceeds to tell us, and this is what really, took me down a deeper path of research here. He starts to tell us that when he was meditating that he saw a puma come through the portal, and he said either enter him or come at him. But either way, it scared him to death. And it was such a crazy experience because I know, having got to know that guy a little bit on this tour, there's no way he would embarrass himself like this, to try to make something up like this. This was a real event to him. And so it took me to this place of, man, there was a reason the Inca were up here. And there is something to these legends and these oral traditions. And there is something to these ancient sites far more than we can conceive, especially when you start to consider the legends of the Inca and the Andean region and the cosmology of the Chicana and how it was a bridge between worlds. And so, again, that was another piece that took me to, man, not only wanting to keep coming to Peru, but go deeper down this megalithic journey where I, in that moment, felt like I encountered this, collision between almost the spirit realm and these ancient megaliths. So,
wow. Yeah, that's crazy. So no ayahuasca involved. No. And because, that's like a typical vision that like you would see in South America, right? The puma or the jaguar. And this guy's completely normal. How old was this guy?
Back then he had to be mid-30s.
Okay.
And in fact, he, I remember he was a humble guy, but he was brilliant.
Yeah.
And somehow it came out that he had, super high IQ, so super genius level guy. He was in the tech industry. And so, it was a very real event. But that kind of connects to, we bring up the puma and the jaguar and these ancient symbols related to the Andean region and the legend of the Hanan Pacha. And this kind of comes from Jesus Gamarra, the great historian and researcher there in Peru. But the Hanan Pacha basically means the world above, I believe. And it describes 3 layers. So you've got one, the Hanan Pacha, which were considered the lost civilization. These would be what I would call the megalithic engineers who built the largest cyclopean walls we see, like at Sacsayhuaman, but also did the earth shaping all over. Ryan, I've got a picture of Ollantaytambo in there, and it's the Temple of the Condor under the Hanan Pacha file. Might be the first picture. But these were the earth shapers. And you could see they could even shape the mountains. And at Ollantaytambo, most people focus on the Temple of the Sun at the top, which is incredible, but you go towards the base at the bottom and you see the Temple of the Condor, which is this huge mountainous outcropping. You can see they literally shaped into a condor. And I believe this is severely ancient or weathered and ancient, but we can still make out the condor in great detail, right? From its head to its beak, its feathers, and then underneath that you see the earth shaping. This is Hanan Pacha style. It almost looks like altars. If you zoomed in, there's precision cuts. There's a stone slab up there. It's getting a bit pixelated, sorry, but there's stairs. And then underneath are megalithic blocks and what some would call fountains. And so this is Hanan Pacha style. And Ryan, you can go through other photos in this folder as I talk. But I believe these were the megalithic earth shapers who had no trouble using some form of ancient technology to artificially shape the mountains, rock outcroppings, and all over we see huacas. That's what the Inca called like their altars. You go in the Cusco highlands and you see these everywhere like that right there. the Inca would say, or the mainstream would tell us, this is a Inca waka where they would do a ceremonial thing, which they did, but I believe it way predates the Inca and was made by the Hanan Pacha. So the Hanan Pacha also is considered the highest of the 3 levels of consciousness, and it's symbolized by the condor, which is why we saw that temple of the condor. So that's the Hanan Pacha, oldest. Next, we have the Uran Pacha. This would be the second civilization. Maybe they survived the Younger Dryas cataclysmic events. They still had fragments of knowledge from the Hanan Pacha and maybe even some of the technology. But I believe they made, and again, Jesus Gamara and others who kind of put this legend all together believe they made probably these smaller megaliths that are more squared. And this is an incredible photo right here that you see. This is at Pisac. This is one of my favorite sites in the Sacred Valley. It doesn't get enough love because most people are focused on Machu Picchu. But look at right here in these 3 photos. This is the ruins of an ancient gate system. Most people, most tourist groups who come to this site, they're up there at the Inca terracing you see in the top left picture. They don't make the hike on the other side of the mountain to see these megaliths. But in this gate, most of these cylinders you see are removed at most of the sites now. This is one of the few places, there's some at Machu Picchu, where you see in these cutouts these stone cylinders, which I believe was part of the mechanism of a gate system. And some of these even spin. And so we actually see a megalithic component, which to me is fascinating when we consider the megaliths. Unfortunately, a lot of these have been ripped out or the top taken off, and then they take the cylinder out.
And how would it have worked?
Now, the mainstream will tell you there was a rope attached around this, which attached to a wooden gate. I think more likely a hinge grabbed that cylinder, which was connected to maybe a stone gate mechanism that went back and forth. But just fascinating that you can see an actual component of a mechanism still in Peru in our day today.
Yeah, for sure.
So Uran Pacha might have made this style, and Uran Pacha is symbolized by the puma, mid-level of consciousness, and that's why we see the puma embedded in so many places. I've got some other pictures there, Ryan, of a puma in the walls at different sites. That's downtown Cusco. Now, you can say that's coincidence, or you can say they're messing with us.
Yeah, for sure. No, that's very intentional. Is the condor, is there any debate from mainstream about whether or not that's truly a condor in that mountain, or is that agreed upon?
Oh, I'm sure there's debate.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure.
I don't remember seeing the condor. I don't remember seeing like above Alante Tumbo to even to where they had carved the stairs or the condor. Somehow I completely missed this. So the condor's at the top, right? You can see the top left of where the head is. And
Yeah, so you see its head on the left with its beak and its eye.
Yep.
And then it's got like its, what do you call the thing that comes down? The goblet.
Oh, sure. Yeah, yeah.
And then, there you go. And then it's, it's arching back and the feathers kind of descending down.
Yep.
And again, I believe this is severely weathered.
Yeah.
But in its finished state, this was probably crystal clear.
Right.
Also across the street from Ollantaytambo is the face of Tanupa or Viracocha. And I've got a picture of that, Ryan, I believe, right next to that somewhere in the same folder. And across the street from Ollantaytambo, you can see this. It's probably like the size of a 7-story building. The face of Viracocha, they call it. And it looks like it was earth-shaped, straight out of the mountain. That's a great photo there, which shows, so we talked about the Hanan Pacha, the first civilization, Uran Pacha second. This is a great example at Machu Picchu of what I would say is likely Uran Pacha second style. Most people don't realize Machu Picchu, the core of it's this white granite megaliths, which on top of is the Inca style construction, which is the small rough stone
At the top.
At the top,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Clearly two different styles of engineering.
Yeah.
One, and you can see on the left and right the cylinders hidden, those components. On the left side of the entrance is the cutouts where there's two cylinders in there. So there was likely a huge gate or enclosure that stopped off that entrance. And so this would be a great example of Uran Pacha the second, and then lastly the third, Ucan Pacha, which would be the Wari or Inca civilizations building on top of the other two, using, they only had copper chisels and hammers, and so they were doing the best they could. And that's symbolized by the serpent or Amaru, which we see embedded everywhere too.
So the stuff on the top is that reconstructed in modern times, or is that that has been there and mainstream is telling us that that's from the same civilization?
Some of that might be kind of modern reconstruction, but like this wall on the right side, you can see that's Inca rough stone cobbled together.
Yeah.
Ryan, you can kind of go through the Uran Pacha, any photos, and we'll probably see more examples. But 90% of Machu Picchu when you're walking around,
Yeah.
or if you pull it up on Google search images, you're going to see 90% of the site is this Ucan Pacha or Inca style construction, small rough stone, sometimes clay mortar, built on top of the megalithic core.
Right.
And that's a great photo you got there, Ryan, of the megalithic core of Machu Picchu. And this is the Temple of the Sun, I believe.
Yep.
And you can see perfectly Inca below it here with this rough stone, and above it, the outbuildings. They were doing their best to replicate the original ancient structure here, which is mortarless. You can see the nubs around what looks like a window. And then look above at the Inca style, and you can see they were making their nubs kind of protrude out to look like it. So much to see and fathom in Peru, from the megaliths to the ancient legends. But if you just came here from Mars and Googled, tell me about who made Peru, they're going to basically chalk it all up to the Inca. Inca made it in the 1400s and 1500s.
Right. Yeah, it's a wild place. Crazy site. That's more the colonial style walls, and I guess around that window is probably for closure. They're hanging stuff to protect it. You got the nubs in the background, probably for ceiling and like roofing or whatever. But then a lot of the nubs are complete mysteries. Like they don't seem to line up with anything, right?
Right. And there's a photo in there, Ryan, of Ollantaytambo Tambo and the Hanan Pacha, the Temple of the Sun, the big infamous huge blocks. This is a great example of, and a lot of people have talked about this. Here's the very top of Ollantaytambo Tambo, right? If I could pan the camera to the left, there's this
The quarry, right?
deep mountainous ravine
Yeah.
with an even higher mountain on the other side. That's the quarry where the stones came from. But what's incredible about this Temple of the Sun, and you brought up the nubs, as I talk to my guides, I work with one of the best, Rumi Alegria in Peru there, and he tells me more and more about the ancient Andean legends. And this was once covered, he says, with esoteric symbols. and that you could only decipher during the solstice times. Sadly, the Spanish chiseled most of them off. And so this was likely once covered in gold, and it shone like a mirror in the moonlight. And the protruding big fangs you see there were likely feline or pumas that have all been chiseled off. And then we can see the Chicana symbol there.
Why did the Spanish not like pumas? Like they blew them up on the other site, right, where the puma came out.
Yep.
Why? Well, like what? What's wrong with the Spanish, man? What's wrong with
Yeah.
pumas?
Yeah, sadly, they were, I think they chucked most of it up to pagan religion. And so they were going to, replace that with their,
Christianity.
yeah, and Catholicism. Like, I've got some pictures in there somewhere of the Coricancha.
It's kind of like what ISIS was trying to do
Right.
a few years ago, and
It's really sad. Like what they did to, I think the last Inca emperor there, when the Spanish arrived in the 1530s, was Atahualpa, if I'm pronouncing that right. And they take this poor guy hostage, and they tell him to send messages throughout the kingdom to bring gold and silver, and we'll release your ruler. Well, he does that. And while they're at the Coricancha, and you can see, this is when they find out about all the treasure buried beneath it in its subterranean chambers. You can see the dark wall there is an original Hanan Pacha style mortarless megalithic wall. And then below too. But on top of it, right, the Spanish begin to tear it down to its foundations and build on top of it with their Catholic Church here. And sadly, they get all this gold and silver, right? But then they end up killing the Inca emperor anyway. Yeah, but there's so many legends of these subterranean chambers that connect, like from the Coricancha all throughout Cusco to Sacsayhuaman. And there's legends of Amaru Muru. He was said to be an Inca priest. And to escape the Spanish, he goes down into the tunnels and takes the most sacred, valuable object, which was considered this golden sun disk. And it was more than just ritualistic or ceremonial. It was said to be a key. Again, this is the ancient Andean legends, a key to a portal. And so, according to the legend, he takes this sun disk and he travels out into the wilderness far away to a place, the legend says, where there was a portal cut into the side of a mountain. And he places the golden sun disk into this indentation in the side of the mountain. And it shone like light, and he passes through, and it turns to stone, and Amaru Muru is never seen again. And this was just thought to be a fantastical, Inca legend. But the locals passed the story down as, a historical account. And then I think it was in the early 90s, the literal site Amaru Muru was discovered near Lake Titicaca. And I've got a photo of that somewhere in there, Ryan. I think in the portal folder, which is just wild to see. And it's literally named after this Incan priest, right? And this is in southern Peru, Puno region near Lake Titicaca, where the Inca are said to have descended, where Viracocha came from. And it's wild. This is in the middle of nowhere. So you got to imagine it in ancient times without a road coming through our highway. This thing is, not far from Lake Titicaca, and it's looks like a giant stargate cut into the side of a mountain. Artificially, and just like the legend, the kind of like the Napa Iglesia cave I showed you, the mountain's been, sheared off, and then there's this big indentation piece in the middle. So many legends, and I could talk endlessly, so I don't want to.
No, you're good. You're good. Yeah, but I mean, that's kind of the lesson is you gotta pay attention to the local legends and to the stories that have been passed down verbally through the generations. So, I mean, what do they? Is that it? Right there?
Yeah, that's a close-up of the indentation of Amaru Muru. But yeah, hopefully we can find there's a good shot of it, from not too far back, but you can see it's been artificially shaped. And that's a softer material. It might be sandstone there, so it's not going to hold up as precision over time, but fascinating nonetheless.
And what are the local legends and traditions saying about a lot of these sites, like in terms of when were they made?
Yeah. Great question. I mean, so much of what we know about even the Inca comes from the Spanish chroniclers, because the Inca didn't necessarily save writings for us. Kind of use this chord system. And so we got to look at the Spanish chroniclers, but the Spanish chroniclers, if you dig into what they wrote, a lot of it states that when the Spanish arrived, they didn't even think the native population built, for example, Sacsayhuaman. And then when they asked the natives, or the Inca, there's a lot of reports that the Inca themselves said, we did not do this. This was already here. But if you get into the deep Andean legends, I mean, there is a lot of talk of giants. Yeah, giants building the megaliths. There's legends of Viracocha and how he passed down, sacred knowledge of working with stone, and how these advanced techniques of working with stone were such that Viracocha could heat them to a level to where he could make the largest blocks float like a feather. And so this was like a legacy of knowledge passed down. And so that's in their own legends. Giants and making stones as light as a feather with heat, right? So some people say, man, that does sound like the extreme heat theory. I know Graham Hancock's talked about that. And so it's just fascinating to consider what was really going on. You brought up the nubs, and there's so many theories out there. One I heard recently, which kind of grabbed my attention, was that if they could soften the stone, were the nubs a part where they were inserting a device and pulling it out, and this might have been the protrusion exit point. Especially the nubs are different. Some are real squared in precision, like in the cave or at the Coricancha, but then other nubs are just like this marshmallowy extraction. So it's just fascinating to consider. But then the Inca, we got to talk a little bit about them. A lot of people don't realize the Inca, that word symbolizes not just the general population of the time, but the nobles and the ruling elite. And so the Inca, this was the royalty. And the Inca rulers were considered the Sapa Inca, the son of the sun, which is interesting because that's something you see in Egypt too, where Ramses was the son of the sun, I believe. It's said in some different depictions in hieroglyphs. So you've got this thing with the sun and being the son of the sun. And the Inca were this incredible civilization, so don't want to discount them. I believe they did the best they could with the tools they had. But, they emerged from the Lake Titicaca area, 1200s, I believe, up into the 1530s, where you got the Spanish conquest. But it's crazy to consider, how did the Spanish conquer this vast army of Inca warriors? There was only, I believe, I don't know if it was just a couple hundred, not even 100 Spanish that arrived with Francisco Pizarro to Cusco. Well, the reason it was so easy for him to enter was, the Inca, they worshiped many gods, foremost Viracocha, the creator god, but he wasn't thought of as just a distant god. He was thought of as even living amongst the people, manifesting as a white-skinned, blue-eyed, bearded character. And so when the Spanish arrive, the Inca are thinking, that looks a lot like the Viracochas, right? And so they kind of, according to history, welcome them with open arms and thinking these are almost godlike characters with beards and blue eyes and lighter skin complexion. And so that's so interesting, that aspect of it. But the Inca themselves were fascinating. I believe it's the first 8 Inca rulers are kind of considered almost mythological in nature. But the big takeaway is the royalty. They to guard their bloodlines, they would do a lot of interbreeding. And a lot of these rulers would have 100, if not 200 children. And when an Inca ruler would die, the Sapa Inca, he would be buried with his plate or his vast treasures, which included servants, unfortunately. So sometimes up to 1,000 servants could be killed, sacrificed, and buried with the Inca emperor. There was one emperor, I think his name was Huayna Capac, if I'm pronouncing that right. When he died, 4,000 of his servants were killed, sacrificed, and buried with him. So it wouldn't...
How were they killed?
I don't necessarily know that.
I know they were in times like the hearts would be.
Yeah.
But I don't know if it was that dramatic.
So it wasn't maybe the coolest thing in the world back in the time of the Inca to be a servant. If the Inca emperor was getting old age.
Yeah. Not the best job in the world.
But the Inca valued, one of their most valued treasures were the...
high turnover.
One of the Inca's most valued treasures was the elongated skulled mummies. They called them malkis, which I think translates as mummy. And so I know you've covered the Paracas skulls on your show before, and that's one thing that really took me down this road, was seeing those in 2017 up close. These first started to be discovered in the 1920s. I think the archaeologist's name was Julio Tello. And these are the biggest elongated skulls on Earth that we know of. And then since then, many more have been discovered. These are the biggest ones in the world that we know of at the Ica Museum. I was just there in May. And I'll circle back to these in just a minute. But what makes them so incredible is that they have all these, anatomical genetic anomalies. The skeptics will say, well, that was cradle headboarded, right? Well, there was a lot of cradle headboarding going on because the general population was cradle headboarding to look like the ruling elite who had naturally elongated skulls. Mm-hmm. And so you'll see this in museums, and I've got some photos of it where there's a natural looking skull next to the big elongated skull. Like right there. Both have been artificially shaped. The one on the right was likely, a normal human being with cradle headboarding. The one on the left is the natural elongated skull. They've got these big, larger jawbones, larger eye sockets, 25 to 30% more cranial volume. And a lot of them have these 2 holes in the back of the head. I've got a photo of that somewhere where it shows the back of a head with 2 holes in it. That one right there, you can see the 2 holes.
Right. What are the 2 holes?
A lot of the skulls have these two holes, which, our skulls don't have. And it's like there was some kind of gland or something that came through there, maybe for blood flow.
I've never seen the two holes before. I don't even think Brian Forster talked about the two holes, but he talked about the lack of the suture mark on the top, which is pretty crazy. Clearly, there's no indication of a suture
Yep.
on the top here.
Yeah, go to that big, one of the big skulls there, and you'll see, a lot of them are missing the sagittal sutures, like that one.
Wow.
That's the biggest one. That's called the Chongo skull. Wow. Now, when I saw this in 2017 at the Inca Museum, it was in this well-lit room in a case in the center. It was like the prize thing to see. When I went there this May, this same skull, if you go back to that other photo that you first showed of me pointing at it, Ryan, that same skull was thrown in with a bunch of other skulls. And if you kept looking to the left, there was normal skulls too. I've lit this photo up to the max, and we even had flashlights shining on it. The point is, the room was so dark, you could barely see the skulls. And it was thrown in with these others, which I thought was very interesting, how 2017, it was on full display in the center, lights on it, and now it's kind of like there's nothing to see here.
Yeah.
Luckily, thank God, we were able to take lots of photo and video. But yeah, you can see the elongation on these.
Yeah.
Like that one right there might be 40% more.
Yeah, at least
It's
looks like.
huge. And the big point is cranial headboarding, cranial deformation cannot make more cranial mass. It can change the shape.
Right.
It doesn't magically create more mass. And then you've got the foramen magnum, which is the hole that the neck attaches to in the head. On these skulls, it's at the back of their skull. On us, it's kind of in the middle. So totally genetic. Since the 20s when these were first being found, now they're finding all kinds of infant elongated skulls. They got some pictures of the infant ones there, that one's probably a couple years old. That's called a Waiki. And you can see the hole in his head. Some of the legends I'm tracking states that when these entities were alive, they were like oracles, for the native population to communicate with the gods. When they were alive, they would have surgically implanted gold artifacts implanted in their skulls to help them better connect. So that's fascinating. But this one here is anomalous because its head's almost as big as its body.
Wow.
And there's a great overhead shot. It's got real long arm bones.
But that looks like it does have the suture at the top, right? Or the kind of going back? Or
Yeah, that one might have suture lines, but huge eye sockets.
Yeah. Yeah, and just a massive cranium. Like you said, the binding doesn't make the skull bigger. It just changes the shape. So it should be pointy if it's going to be longer. But that one is just massively round all the way up to the top, as are several others. It's wild.
Yeah, and then we've got some photos, Ryan, they're kind of mummified looking with hair on them, and those are the infant ones right there, yeah. Look at that. You can see the hand behind it. Look at how massive that skull is. And the arrow is pointing to the eye, the face area. And this was a newborn. And so the point is, it was born with an elongated skull because cradle headboarding takes at least a year, I believe, to take shape.
Right.
And these things were born like this.
Wow.
But where it gets crazy is, so we've got the Paracas skulls. A lot of them date between, 1,000 to 3,000 years old, I believe.
That's incredible and disgusting all at the same
Isn't
time. Isn't it? Yeah. It's wild. That's the eye. I thought the eye was that thing at the top,
there's
but it's
another
not.
angle right there of it.
Oh, okay.
But look at the length.
Right. That's crazy.
Now, where it gets crazy is again, according to the oral traditions, there were some of these alive even during the time of the Inca. Again, the Inca, back to them, circling back, their most prized possessions were these malkis, the mummies. And this is what they were bearing in the Coricancha tunnels. In fact, I believe the war called the War of the Two Brothers in the 1530s that started with the Inca, that started in some ways over which brother got to keep which mummies. And so that cave, Napa Iglesia, we talked about, we'll come back to that too. In the back of it, they were storing elongated skulled mummies. That picture you showed previously of me sitting in the Huaca, this megalithic cutout in the Cusco highlands, these were the sacred places to the Inca where on the solstice events they would bring the elongated skulled mummies. And according to legend, these mummies would become animated and they would begin to telepathically speak to the Inca, which is, pretty fascinating to consider. They weren't just saving the mummies, they were actually bringing them out on these special events to where they would become animated and speak. Fascinating.
Had to be ayahuasca involved in that, though, right?
Yeah, you'd think so.
I mean, you'd think there would have to be. 'Cause, I mean, I'm into some ancient cool myths, but you're going to need some ayahuasca for that shit.
Well, here's where it gets crazy. So
now it gets crazy.
Even crazier.
Okay.
Like I kind of blew it a little bit, letting the secret sauce out. But according to some of these legends, some of these entities were actually alive during the time of the Inca, and they were considered the priest class, the scientists, the astronomers. There's a replica or a model they've got down there in Paracas of what they looked like.
Dude.
Looks like one mean brother.
Yeah, man. Don't mess with that guy.
So Ryan, go back to the Napa Iglesia or Huaca folder, the megalithic portal.
Did the Spanish didn't have any like chronicles of these of these guys?
They did.
They did.
In fact, the Spanish, even the Spanish chronicled about the Malkis, and that's where a lot of this is coming from.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Got it.
So here's what's crazy. This cave, there was that photo that showed the triangle. I got to hike back up at one point to the back of the cave there on the left where they've really rocked it off. But back up there, they've really filled it in, but you could see ruins of walls back there. And again, according to my guides and the local knowledge keepers, back up there to the left, you could see what looked like Inca-style walls. But there was a sacred, cave area back there where they kept the Malkis. And again, they would place it in that portal, and they would do their thing on the solstice days. Okay, but here's where the best part is. When you leave this cave and you go to the left, you've got a miniature Inca-style structure. It's small, rough stone and mortar. And it's right out the cave to the right side. And I asked Rumi, again, my guide and one of the best knowledge keepers, what's up with this little structure? Like, that's for a 4-foot tall entity. And he said, this was for the caretakers of the site. During the time of the Inca, I said, well, who were the caretakers? He said they were the living Malkis. These were the astronomers who were the caretakers of this site, and this was their structure. And actually inside there, there was some megalithic Hanan Pacha style shaping. So they had built around, some other ancient stuff, this structure. And this is where these 4-foot tall humanoids with elongated skulls basically lived and took care of this site and would bring out the older mummies during the solstice events. How wild is that?
Yeah, that's wild. I mean, because nothing else is fitting through that door except something very, very small.
And there's even been other structures that people have been posting about more recent that are even more miniature than that. And you see this too in the Yucatan, some small structures. So I think it was kind of, this old world was more like Narnia than today. You know, there was different variations.
Right. You got the little people, you got the giants, you got the regular sized people. So that skull that we saw that looked like it was a newborn, that could have been one of these little people potentially, or you think that was what was up?
I would say that one we called a Waiki that had the big kind of hole in the top, that might have been one of these kind of more 4 foot tall. Although Waiki was still more of an infant at this stage, or a child, but because a lot of the Procus, they could have been 6 footers. But again, you get into the legends and you see these structures, and a lot of them were diminutive and of this smaller variation. So much to Peru, so much to the history. I mean, we could just talk forever about it, but like I was telling you over dinner, some of my favorite things to do in Peru is just get up into the highlands and see these spots that nobody really knows about. You'll be in the most remote spot in the highlands and you're seeing precision cutouts, what looks like altars, kind of like what we saw in the cave, made with perfect 90-degree angles. And again, the big point is, according to the archaeological record that the mainstream uses, the Inca basically had these copper chisels and stone hammers. I think is about a 3 or 4 on the Mohs scale. All of this stone we're talking about is mostly andesite, granite, basalt. We're talking 6, 7 on the Mohs scale. Much harder, as you know, with the vases that we got to hold. When you touch this stuff and hold it, you realize how dense it is and how solid it is. There is no way a copper chisel and hammer is going to not just cut off a piece of this from a quarry, but then precision fashion it to which looks like almost laser-like precision in its original state. And so that's where, you know, your mind just starts to go with, well, who was this? And then you get into the legends and you visit Sacsayhuaman, Ollantaytambo, and you see all these different versions of architecture, especially in Machu Picchu, one of the most fascinating sites I've ever been to. I don't know if I have any folders of pictures of it, Ryan. You might look for photos of the Temple of the Moon. It's on the backside of Machu Picchu. And on our tours, people can pay a little extra to go take this journey if it's open. And I did this 2 years ago. It was one of the hardest hikes I've ever done in my life. I'm not the most in shape guy in the world like you.
It was closed the day that we were there. It was raining, and so we couldn't get up there. We had it scheduled, but it was raining. So yeah, they don't let people go up there if the weather's not
right.
good.
And in fact, you got to be so careful. On our last tour, we almost had a fatality.
Yeah, I believe it. What happened?
Because when I was hiking, I was scared to death because I'm already afraid of heights. And most people go up to the Huayna Picchu, which is awesome. There's some megalithic shaping at the top of that. But I think it's an even harder hike to go down to the Temple of the Moon because you're going halfway up, like to Huayna Picchu, but then you're going all the way down to the river. So to fathom how these ancients were making this hike. And again, this is Peru. There's no railings. It's moist and wet. We had a guy stumble, and he was literally going off the side when he said a husband and a wife, 2 people that were nearby him, grabbed him. And it's like our tour would have been so bad, you know what I mean, for his family mostly. But thank God he was okay. But this incredible hike, So we go up, we go down, but while you're on your way to this temple, and again, you've got to do it to really grasp what I'm saying. Just with a tiny backpack on water, it is such a hard hike. How are they transporting the stone? But if I could show you videos I've taken, you even see the Hanan Pacha, the ancient megalithic engineer earth shaping in the steps. You know, you'll go around a mountain and you can see, like in Machu Picchu, you'll see precision earth shaping in the steps, severely weathered, but it's there if you have the eye to see. At one point, we're coming around the mountain and you could see it's like sheer granite. And so there's no way for the trail to continue. What they do, they completely shear the mountain off all the way around this curved spot, I would say, for 50 yards. Yeah, there's some of what I'm saying.
That's the hike up, and that's bedrock.
Yeah, look at this. You're just going down. But you get to the Temple of the Moon, and it's just so otherworldly. You see the cutouts, the trapezoidal look. Right next to the Temple of the Moon is what's called the Temple of the Asteroids. It's further down. Oh, there's a great video. If you kept going further to the left, and the Temple of the Asteroids literally has asteroids in the cutouts that the Inca were venerating. But you can see here, this is probably...
Like they're still there today?
They're still there.
Wow.
And they're translucent. I've got some video of them. And according to my guide Rumi, there's even temples further down the river that nobody's even seen yet, except for some archaeologists.
Wow. Which
is just fascinating to know that there's stuff we haven't seen.
Yeah.
There's the Temple of the Asteroids. And if you saw up close, you'd see they're really reddish, translucent, marbled.
But that's space rock? That's legit?
Yeah.
Wow. And it's still there? Is it connected, or is it just still sitting there on the shelf?
No, it's sitting there.
That's incredible that it would still be there after.
You can see in the floor there, there's just the remnants. Some of the stuff is so old. So I know I've talked a lot about Peru. There's so much going on.
Yep.
And it's just one of my favorite places on earth.
For sure. Yeah. Like Narnia, I mean, you mentioned, is like a really good way to visualize what it might have looked like back in the day, when it was fully inhabited and you got different people of different statures. And we talked about the little people, but the giants.
Yeah.
I mean, the Spanish chroniclers wrote about giants and actually encountering giants themselves, still there. I mean, what do you want to maybe comment on that component?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. The Spanish chroniclers, even in several places, wrote about not just what they heard, but some of their observations. And I'm just kind of paraphrasing what I remember reading. But there's one account where they see the locals, the Inca, they had a cave, kind of like the one I showed somewhere. And they go into this cave, and inside this cave are gigantic Malkis. I don't know if it said how tall.
I think they said in one case that the Spanish came up to their waistline.
Yeah.
I mean, like, these were really big people.
Yeah, gigantic.
Yeah.
I'm picturing a 10 or 15 foot tall mummy. There's somebody, it might have been Timothy Alberino, that had a recreation of this made and an image of these two giants in a cave, and kind of with the elongated skulls. But this is what the Spanish chroniclers wrote about, seeing or hearing about, which is just fascinating. But again, the Inca legends are chock full of giant legends, and the same I've found in Easter Island. and then all over North America. That was one thing that kind of got me into all this too, was before I was really connecting the dots, I stumbled upon the legends of Lovelock Cave. And we can talk about that now or later.
Yeah, I think now's a good time, and then maybe we break after that. Yeah.
So yeah, I remember reading about the legend of Lovelock Cave and how the Paiutes of northern Nevada had this legend that in the ancient bygone age, they went to war against this ferocious tribe of red-haired cannibalistic giants known as the Sitka. And so I actually went out there. I was living in California at the time and took a buddy who was open-minded but didn't know much about the alternative views of history. There's some drone shots I got of the cave and then me inside it. We go out to
that's
the
the entrance to Lovelock Cave on the left?
Yeah, that's the cave. It's this big limestone outcropping.
Wow.
It's a lot higher than it looks, you know. But you feel like you're on Mars out here in the middle of nowhere, Nevada. It's otherworldly. So according to the legend, let me share that first. The Paiutes were being ravaged by this cannibalistic red-haired giant tribe. And they realized to finally defeat them, they needed help. So they basically made alliances with other tribes. This common enemy brought together all the native tribes of the region. And according to the legend, they trapped the giants in a cave, or backed them into the cave. And they somehow lit the cave entrance on fire. And, as any giants tried to escape, they just penetrated it with a flurry of fire-piercing arrows. And so this was the legend, which just seemed like a fancy tale until late 1800s. There was a Native American woman named Sarah Winnemucca, and she was the daughter of the Paiute chief Winnemucca at that time. She wrote the first ever known autobiography of a Native American woman, and it was called Life Among the Paiutes. And so she was a big deal in her day, writing the first book. Well, in her book, Life Among the Paiutes, she mentions the legend of the Sitka, which she referred to as the red-haired people eaters that warred against her tribe. And so that brought the legend to new life when now she's recounting it in her book as fact, and also saying that she had a dress that had been passed down from generations that was trimmed with the red hair of this tribe. So, if there wasn't something to this, it kind of seems like a weird thing to do, to trim a dress with red hair.
So we can DNA test this dress, right?
If it was around.
Yeah. So where's this dress?
Right? And there's photos you can find of her in a dress, and I wonder, is that the dress?
Yeah.
You can't really, I can't tell. So that first it was legend, then it's documented. And then in 1911, there is bat guano miners out in these caves in this is about 90 miles east of Reno. So they're out in this cave mining for bat guano to use for fertilizer. And these miners start to find countless artifacts. And if you read the report of some of these miners, they were finding thousands of artifacts. Duck decoys, stone notched calendars. That's a gigantic pestle that was found underneath the mouth of Lovelock Cave. And I'll get to that in a minute. So these miners find all these artifacts, including, according to their reports, large skeletons and skulls. They're finding so much, and word spreads, and this is way back in 1911, that a year later, 1912, the University of California sends out an archaeological team. There's the duck decoys. These are actually on display at the Smithsonian in New York. They're the most elaborate duck decoys ever discovered. And they came right out of Lovelock Cave. And so...
What was it used for? The duck decoy? How was it? What were they doing with it?
Well, so great question. In ancient times, there was a giant lake called Lake Lahontan, if I'm pronouncing that right, that literally enveloped this whole region. So it was the cave once sit on this epic lake, which has since just turned to mud.
Like
It's-
when?
This is in the what period is it? It was prehistoric period. There it is, right there.
During
Pleistocene.
the Pleistocene. So does that mean that duck was potentially like
Yeah, it was.
14,000 years old or something? Like
Yeah.
12,000?
So look at there's the lake right there, and so
Holy shit, dude.
so this cave was sitting on this lake.
That's crazy.
Yeah, so it was this lush area full of sea life or water life in the lake.
So does the Smithsonian people, do they think that is a 12,000-year-old plus duck? Or do they think, like, what does mainstream
Yeah.
say about that duck? Do they think it's like made by the Native Americans or something? Or
Yeah, I don't know. I can't remember which date they put on it, but yeah, they chalk all this up to the Native Americans.
Wow.
If I've been to the Carson City Museum, which has the best
But
art.
there's no ducks there now. So why would the
Right.
Native Americans be making ducks if there's no lake
Yeah.
with no ducks in it?
So if you go to the Nevada State Museum in Carson, they have a little display for Lovelock Cave.
Okay.
And so does the Winnemucca Museum not far. But they chalk it all up to Native Americans.
Wow.
And in fact, it's super hard to find Lovelock Cave. Almost like they make it extremely hard, but the plaque there at the cave is saying this was just Native American.
Is it open to public? Like you can just walk up to it and go
Yeah.
in? Wow. I'm going to do that for sure. I'm going to that cave.
Yeah, so right there where this guy's walking in, this is like a little side entrance. I walked up in there, and these giant owls flew out and scared the life out of me.
Wow. That's freaking cool.
So the archaeologists show up, and they their last names were Loud and Harrington. They wrote a book called Lovelock Cave, which I scoured.
This is 1912?
This is 1912.
Okay.
The book probably came out later, but they found 10,000 plus artifacts. Now, this is before political correctness. So the archaeologists, again, these are archaeologists, but the way they talk in their book, and I'll get into it, is wild. Look how vast the cave is.
Wow.
And guess what you notice? The ceiling of the cave is charred black.
Huh. It's just fire. It's just over thousands of
Right?
years.
Kind of hinting to the legend of fire, maybe.
Yeah.
That was used. So the archaeologists find these duck decoys. They find the stone-notched calendar. They find, according to their own words, giant weapons shafts.
Wow.
And they even talk again. This is before political correctness. They're totally confirming the legend of the Paiutes. They said, we found embedded into the back of the cave arrow fragments, charred, that seem to confirm the legend that the Paiutes shot arrows into the cave.
Wow.
And then they use the words, we found giant, weapons shafts. They found arrows that were just, like the, not the arrow part, but the wooden part fragments that were just huge. That pestle that Ryan showed, that huge thing that was found at the mouth of the cave. If you can go back to that, Ryan, I think his name is Gene Hattori. He's the leader of the anthropology at the Nevada State Museum. He said, with his own words, he confirmed the legend of the Paiutes. He said, this is so massive and unlike the normal size ones we find that, and I'm paraphrasing, that this basically seems to confirm the legend of the Sitika, and it's likely that they used it, he said. So what's crazy, though, back to the archaeologists, they also find skeletons. And with red hair. And they, in their book, in the appendices, however you say that, they feature what looks like a big skull. And then they show a picture of a humanoid, which to me is a humanoid. Do you see a little photo, Ryan, of a little humanoid face? So that's literally in Loudon Harrington's book, Lovelock Cave.
What?
And the skull is from one of the skulls they found. And Loudon Harrington they said the biggest and best skulls and skeletons were sadly stolen by the miners. And they said were basically of larger proportion. But this humanoid looks very similar to the humanoids of Peru.
Yeah.
And this thing was found mummified in like a fabric. And
that's in the archaeologist's book.
This is in their book.
And where's that now?
You can find it, I think, free online. If you look up Lovelock Cave by Loudon Harrington.
Okay.
I found it for free.
What about the skeleton? Where's that? That round-headed skeleton? I'm
going to get to that.
Okay, got it.
So this is from the archaeologist, right? And again, they said the best giant skeletons were taken by the miners who beat them to it. In fact, they said a giant skull was found by the miners, and it was bought by a fraternal lodge that used it for initiation purposes. The point is the archaeologists are confirming the legends, and then when you read the reports of the miners, I think his name was James T. Hart. He was a miner or one of the excavators. He said on the south end of the cave they found a 6'6" skeleton that was just like thick, very thick in proportion, and it had red hair. And then I might have some newspaper article clippings there in the Lovelock folder, Ryan. All kinds of newspaper articles you can find that talk about giant, 7'7", 7'10", 8'4", even a 10-footer I found around Lovelock Cave and the Humboldt dry lake bed. So there's all these historical newspaper accounts of giants, and we can get into that on a broader subject. But concerning this Lovelock Cave area. But then where it gets really crazy, go back to that one photo you had, Ryan, of the big red skull. So there's several people that claim up to about the year 2000 to have seen these skulls in a back room at the Humboldt Museum.
Where's that?
Humboldt Museum's like an hour drive from kind of where this cave is, Lovelock. I've actually been there. Well, I drove out there once and the museum was closed. But according to these people, including this guy, Don Monroe, who was with a guy named M.K. Davis, this is from the 70s. This photo was taken. They went out to this museum, and in the back room were these skulls. And you can see the one in the middle looks quite a bit larger than the others. And if you look close, it almost looks like it might have a double row of teeth. What's crazy is Barbara Powell, she was, at least when I was doing my research on this, she was the director of this museum, the Winnemucca Museum. And she's on record as saying, we do have skulls from Lovelock Cave that are not on public display because the state does not recognize their legitimacy. She said it. I've got her exact quote.
Wow.
So she confirms that. But I love it because Nevada's still kind of like the Wild West. It's like if this was California, they would be repatriating these or making them just disappear. Right. They're at least holding, or at least, in the middle 2000s, we're holding on to them still in a back room. And the word is that if you ask, you can see these. And so that's one of my next must-dos.
Yep.
But that's the legend of Lovelock Cave.
That's crazy.
You can see there in that more recent photo of them, the big red one is not there unless it's been damaged.
Yeah, because that's the same one, the third one.
Yeah, by the quarter. But yeah, then if we get into the North American legends of giants from the late 1800s up into the early 1900s, big time publications like the New York Times, the Scientific American, were writing about giant discoveries. And I think it's, again, this was before political correctness. And, people were pushing westward with the gold rush. They were finding mounds. They were digging into the mounds and often pulling out 7 and 8 foot tall skeletons. Anybody can go to the Library of Congress Digital Archives. You want to go into the section called Chronicling America, and you can for free put in the keywords and find countless articles from almost every state documenting. It's mostly 7, 8 foot giants. I've also found, they don't say necessarily giants, but skeletons. I've, again, found reports of 9, 10 foot. And so what is this phenomenon, And the Smithsonian today would say that's, there was no giants. But if you look into their own, there's a New York Times article right there, May 4th, 1908. Even the Smithsonian's own archaeological reports from their excavations of many of the mounds talks about the size of a lot of these skeletons, 7, 8, 9 foot tall. And sadly, they've destroyed almost all of the mounds that once dotted the landscape by the tens of thousands. There's still some we can see even here in Florida, Tennessee, Alabama, Ohio. But the point is, in them was often found not only large skeletons, but insane artifacts. Have you seen some of these?
Yeah, some of them.
I've got some pictures, Ryan, of some of these artifacts found in the North American file. Right there is one of my favorites. I mean, does that not look Mayan to you? This was found in an Ohio mound.
Wow.
And this is a stone pipe effigy.
That's a pipe?
Yeah.
Dude, that's awesome. That is so cool. Is it painted or is that like natural color on the back?
I think it's the natural stone color.
Yeah.
There's some other crazy artifacts that have been found in these. Do you see a hatchet kind of stone looking weapon? So these colonialists would find stuff like this, copper ornaments. I've found articles where it talks about horned skeletons with horns. There's a picture of a box, Ryan. It's black and white. This was found, I believe, in one of the Missouri mounds, or maybe Ohio mounds. Everybody should follow Dr. Gregory Little on X.
Yep. He does a great job.
Yeah, but he posted this photo, and you can see the shovel in the background. And apparently this was unmovable. This stone, which I think was just connected to the ground, that when the Smithsonian demolished this mound, they just left it. And I think they've since built something over it. So there's so much going on in North America with the legends of giants. But we have them depicted even in these newspaper articles.
Yeah. Like legitimate publications. Like, I mean, you're talking New York Times. That's legit. And so, yeah, I did this post on X a couple of months back, 4 months back or so, and it was suggesting the idea that Denisovans were giants, and so it was very simple. Just said, okay, there's been 3 Denisovan skull bones found. One was a skull, one was a pinky bone, one was a molar. And so if we were to, and they're all just massive compared to, modern humans or ancient people, just massive. And so if we were just to fill in the rest of the bones on that were left and just proportionately scaled them up based on only these 3 bones that we found, how big would the skeleton be? Well, the skeleton would have been over 7 feet tall, if just scaled proportionately. And so the post was going viral, you know, 100,000, 500,000, almost a million views on it, you know, all these comments, and then somebody came in and shut it down. It was like, this
No
is,
way.
yeah, like this is speculation, you know, it's like crazy. So just some mainstream idiot just came in and said, stop talking about this. Basically, it makes me uncomfortable. And so they put like some flag on the post that said this is whatever, speculation or something. So, but I feel like there could be something there potentially with the Denisovan race and species. And so what people are saying right now is, no, it's just, they're kind of like the Neanderthals where they were just, had much larger heads and, you know, much larger pinkies and much larger molars, or, you know, they're just going to make up excuses until, and maybe that's right, but like it just feels like we ought to just at least explore the possibility that Denisovans may have been massively large, and maybe that's what people are seeing, and maybe that's what the Spanish saw, that leftover, you know, there it is. Yeah, there's the post.
Oh man, yeah, that's crazy that they put their flag on it, huh?
Yeah. I mean, it's not surprising.
When you see the Denisovan tooth, that thing is so massive. There's a side by side with a human molar.
Yeah.
If you got that photo, Ryan.
Yeah, it's like 2x.
And it's, it almost feels like the Denisovan, I guess, word and narrative might be giving mainstream. This is just one of my rabbit trail thoughts. Might kind of be giving even mainstream archaeologists permission to talk about larger skeletons and entities. It's almost like,
that's crazy.
And we can get into the Nephilim if you want. It's almost like, is this one and the same? Basically giant hybrids. Again, which so many legends, whether it's the Andean legends, the Book of Enoch talking about giants. And when you see that tooth, that was on one big dude.
One big dude, for sure. And mainstream's going to be like, no, his jaw was just bigger. And it's like, how do we know? We don't know that. And we need to find like a femur or something, you know,
Right.
That's the way to prove it. But because they'll even say, oh, no, the skull was just bigger. But, you know, you got to find a long bone in order to prove that. But I think it's just something, and maybe it's not true. Maybe just the skulls and the jaw bones were just that much bigger. But I feel like we just don't know. You know, we don't know, and it's certainly a possibility. And with all these legends, and with all these, you know, the Spanish and these legends in North America, it's like maybe, you know, maybe this is the answer.
You know, Jimmy Crissetti had a tweet not too long ago that was just awesome because it was something I literally had thought about, but I don't know if I ever verbalized it. But he was basically saying, are the Neanderthal skulls and bones we see posted, was this actually the Nephilim? You know, because they're clearly not just human-like, right? These look like hybrids. They look like humanoids, almost chimeric. And so, you know, again, back to this old world being like Narnia, was it an actual separate class of again, hybrid, humanoid, whatever you want to say? I could go into that. I don't know how much time we got.
We should probably break here soon. Yeah, I mean, just maybe one more question. You've seen this? It's like 1 million-year-old skull that just came out. Like I think it was maybe China or something.
Yeah, I saw a headline about that.
Yeah, just wild. I mean, obviously the human timeline just gets like Homo sapien, like me and you, keeps getting pushed back, you know, farther and farther and farther. And it's like, okay, you know, we're 10,000 years old. Now we're 100. Now we're 190. Now we're 300. And now this thing is like, well, maybe we're 1 million.
Man.
And so how old, you know, could humans really be? Homo sapiens really be? This was great. This was wild, man.
Yeah, and when I first saw that, I almost thought it was, you know, Neanderthal at first.
Yeah.
Because it looks a little wide and...
It does, but it was actually crushed.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like, that's why the top looks the shape kind of...
Fascinating. Yeah, Ryan, scroll down there because I saw on that in that article right there, it basically said this is proving that humans, look at this, coexisted with other sister species, including Neanderthals. So,
Yeah.
I mean, they could be saying right there that this is proof ancients were living alongside hybrids.
Right.
I mean, they're right there in the BBC.
Right. Right.
That's fascinating.
It really is. Yeah, hopefully more to come on that one, but it's like, yeah, it's one of those things that really shakes up the understanding, what we think we understand about.
Right. That's what I say. There's so much more to history than we've been told.
Yeah.
And, if you Google, history timeline, it's going to take you back to what? 5,000, BC, and pretty much stops.
Yeah.
The mainstream wants us to believe that the further we look back, the more archaic the civilizations were, the more primitive their methods of construction. But I think these megalithic marvels we see, they tell us there's a whole lot more going on. The further we look back, actually, the more advanced they were, I believe. The further we look back, they had a sacred knowledge that we've lost. And that these were made with a lost technology. And if the experts of today are honest, what we see confounds them. It defies our greatest modern engineering and tells us a different version of history. So,
yep, no doubt. Well, with that, yeah, let's take a lunch break. We'll be back to finish up. Well, good, man. Well, welcome back. So maybe we head into Egypt next.
Let's do it.
All right, cool. So what's your favorite, craziest, cool place in Egypt right now?
Oh, man. I think right now would be the Serapeum of Saqqara.
I saw you did a video on it recently.
Yep, did a video on it recently, did a deep dive. Been there a couple times, and just every time I go, I'm just amazed. There's no words when you go to a place like that. When you consider it in the context of, again, mainstream archaeology and Egyptology and what they say, and we can get into that. But yeah, this is a place where I think it was in the 1850s, might have been the year 1850, that a French Egyptologist stumbled upon the site. He was in the area and he saw the corner of a smaller sphinx head sticking out of the sand. And so he's like, what do we got here? He begins to excavate and finds, I think it was upwards of 300, one of these smaller sphinxes. And they were leading down to the subterranean chamber. And it's interesting. You can go back and find the sketches that his team made of their discoveries and them and the how they depict the Serapeum. But this is just a crazy sight. It's subterranean. On the ground level, it doesn't appear like there's much to see, right? But you go down and you begin descending, and you're going down under the bedrock, and you see they've put up these modern big old iron doors. You pass through these doors, and that's when the fun starts. You're immediately greeted with this huge block of granite. It's about 30 tons, and it's right there on your left. And this thing's got protruding nub coming out of it right there on one side. The other one's been broken off. But as you look closer, not only do you see tool marks, you realized this isn't a box. This is a lid for a box.
Wow.
A 30-ton lid. And this thing is in an unfinished state. And so, as we'll get into, you can see that there is, like we would see in any manufacturing plant today, of, a product that would be in 3 stages of completion. There's the rough product that's just been brought in. It hasn't necessarily been worked on much. There's a semi-finished and then finished. You see all 3 here. And so this would be probably in a semi-finished state. And so you start to go into the subterranean a labyrinth, and you realize this thing is got curved ceilings. I've got pictures of that somewhere, Ryan. It's got curved tunnels like a modern day subway. And so the actual tunnel system itself doesn't get enough love. A lot of people talk about the boxes, but this tunnel system is a megalithic marvel in itself. And according to my guide, Muhammad Ibrahim, who's also an Egyptologist and author, he believes that this tunnel system was once inlaid with gold or some kind of connective material. So it would shine like a metal tube under the ground, which that'll point us in a later to kind of maybe the function of this.
Why does he think that?
Well, because it was likely for energy production. And so when you look at the geology that we're going to get into, limestone is highly conductive material. It almost acts as a the way it works with granite is really interesting. Granite is like almost radioactive stone that is said to almost send and receive waves like radio waves. And so limestone might almost act as a conductor for granite. And limestone is known to absorb negative energy, even air pollution. And so geology is a huge part to everything Egypt, right? From the pyramids to the Serapeum. But you go down these chambers and you start to see on each side, staggered, are these chambers, which a lot of people call crypts, on the side or rooms. And I've got photos of those. And inside the chambers are the boxes, right? And these side chambers are incredible because, like in this one here, you can see this one still has some of the vaulted material left, or the slatted, you see the slats of like what looks like blocks on the top? A lot of the chambers, side chambers, don't have those anymore, so it just looks like it's a rough limestone carve out, but they were once all lined top to bottom with the slatted material. I can't remember what material it is, but the point is, again, it was all layered, the specific type of materials they wanted. And then inside are the boxes, but what's crazy is the boxes for the floor, it's cut way below or much further below the level of the main tunnel floor, right? So that's one of the great mysteries is it would have been so much easier just to have the rooms, the crypts for the boxes on the same level as the tunnel. Instead, they went way down and pushed these 100-ton boxes inside. Wow. And on average, some are bigger, some are smaller, but on average, these boxes are 100 tons with the lid about 30 tons and the base about 70 tons. And they're approximately 13 feet long, 8 feet wide, 8 feet high. And a lot of them, like that one, although severely ancient and weathered, has laser-like precision, as some would say. So this is the Serapeum of Saqqara. There's about 25 boxes or 24. Most of them are granite or granodiorite, and there's one that's limestone. And again, this thing is otherworldly.
Huge. So is that the one that has the glyphs carved into it that are...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good eye. Yeah, you can see this is one of 4, I believe, where there's hieroglyphs kind of etched into it around the bottom. But you'll notice if you see other clearer photos, the hieroglyphs don't match the precision of the boxes themselves. And so it's like they were scratched in at a later date with, their copper or bronze tools, which are like a 3 or 4 on the Mohs scale when this is a 7. Now, let's talk about the mainstream theory real quick. The mainstream would tell us that, the dynastic Egyptians basically made this labyrinth, I think they say around 1500 BC, as an animal catacomb for the sacred bulls of Apis, which was a cult near Memphis. And basically that they chiseled this thing out by hand and transported these 100 plus ton boxes from 10 hours away from Aswan, because most of the stone comes from the Aswan Quarry.
Wow. It's like 500 miles, right?
500 miles. That would be a 10-hour car ride.
Yeah, a 10-hour car ride.
10-hour car rides.
They weren't riding in cars.
So,
or maybe they were.
right, and then they would say that, they got the boxes here, and then an army of men transported them down into these rooms using a combination of levers and ramps and ropes. And then the best part is to get them into the lowest crypt right room. You're going to love this. They filled the crypt with sand up to the level of the floor passage, and then they simply pushed in the box on top of the sand, and then once it was in there, they took the sand out and it just floated down. And so that's the kind of the mainstream nutshell version. And as I can break down, I think there's several holes in that of why I believe these are far older and another way they did it.
Yeah, let's hear it. I mean, first off, I had no idea that they went that deep into the ground. I thought that where we could see was pretty much the ground level, but this is showing that the base of that thing is as big as the lid. I mean, or bigger even. It's freaking huge.
It's huge. Yeah, and there's some lids that are almost as big as the box themselves.
Right. That's crazy.
So yeah, I guess there's several problems or conundrums with the mainstream theory. Yeah. One would be, I guess what I would call the distance and the transportation problem. Again, being that most of the material for these boxes came from the Aswan Quarry, 10 hours away. And I kind of hinted at this in the mainstream narrative. But I've been to the Aswan Quarry. This is, again, 10 hours away, 500 miles.
It's 10 hours away if you're going 50 miles per hour.
Right.
So, I mean, it's if you're pulling these things with a rope and a sled, you're years away.
Years, right?
I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy. But pulling it through a rope and a sled through the terrain is going to be impossible, right? So,
and it's the same thing. The granite inside the Great Pyramids, inside the so-called King's Chamber, came from the same quarry in Aswan. So again, consider these unfathomable distances. And I think the whole distance piece doesn't get enough airplay because it's just so crazy. A lot of people would say, well, it's easy. They were floated on the Nile. Well, I did a little research to, lift cargo off of our ports on and off ships. We use these super cranes that can lift up to 1,000 tons, right? And everybody's seen those. It's not easy lifting a 100-ton. It was probably more in their unfinished state, a huge chunk. How do you lift that from the ground to the boat? And then, again, a lot of people don't realize it's a 1 mile distance from Aswan Quarry to the Nile. And then it's a 7 mile distance, I think I measured, from once you get up to Saqqara to the Nile. The point is there was still land transport involved, right? And like everybody's been on the freeway and seen one of these wide load trucks coming through, with a double wide mobile home or something. Double wide on average weighs 20 tons. The largest weight our 18-wheeler semi-trucks are allowed to carry is 40 tons, right? Yeah. Think about it. That's in the year 2025 on an American freeway. 40 tons. We're talking 100 plus tons, again, probably a lot more in their unfinished state, being transported 10 hours away. So again, that's a part of this whole mystery that doesn't get enough attention. And then we get into...
it was a national project, Eric.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was a national project.
They believed in the afterlife.
Right.
This is why they were able to do it, because this is what Zahi told me on this show.
Yeah.
They believed in the afterlife. That's how they were able to do these things.
Yeah.
That was the answer.
And it was a national project, so they had all the time to do it.
Right.
Right?
Right. Yeah.
So you've got this transportation issue. Now let's talk about digging out this subterranean labyrinth. we're told that they did it by hand. Well, this would actually seem to be almost impossible when you consider the nature of limestone. When you hack it with hand tools, a lot of people have heard of limestone powder. It's like this cement. And in fact, they use it big time today, limestone powder for a lot of things in the cement industry. And so the point is, this would get into the lungs real quick in these deep tunnels of the workers. And they probably wouldn't be able to survive long with hardly any ventilation. So you've got that issue. And then, kind of the light issue of they're going to need to see in these vast, dark subterranean tunnels. They're going to need torches. Again, if the dynastics are doing this, dynastics. Yet we don't see any flame light from torches on these low tunnel ceilings. Kind of interesting. And then you've got one of my favorite conundrums, the space conundrum inside the tunnels.
So like Lovelock Cave, you're saying is like burnt and it's like black kind of on the roof of the
Burnt
place.
to a crisp.
Yeah, but you don't see any of that anywhere in the Serapia.
You don't see you don't see smoke, remnants of smoke markings.
Yeah.
Or anything like that.
Yeah, right. Which means either A, Yusef is right, and it was covered with something else, and that was removed, or B, they had some other technique for lighting the place.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah, good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so there's some estimates that say it would take like 1,000 men, maybe more, to transport one of these 100-ton boxes. When you consider, what the average man can push for a burst of time. The most conservative estimates, I think, are like 300 men. Well, if you look inside the tunnels, they're about 2 feet wider, and I've got a great picture of this. They're about 2 feet wider than the boxes themselves. This is the one that's stuck
Right.
In the tunnel. It's like they were moving it in when the cataclysm hit and froze it in time.
Yeah.
You can see there's no room for a vast army to push and pull this.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, you can fit like 6 guys back there pushing that thing.
Right.
And in front of it, maybe 6 guys with a rope or something pulling
Yeah.
it. Right. So no way.
There's no way. There's no
way.
room for a vast army.
Right.
And then when you get it to the enclosure, it's the same. Some of them are there's just a couple feet on either side.
Right.
So the space is a huge problem that eliminates this theory of an army of men
Right.
pushing, pulling, moving. Especially, they're saying they had ramps, and where's all that going to fit?
So say you have like 10 rows of 6 people, or maybe you can fit like 4 people across, legitimately 4 to 5 people if they're really pulling ropes, but then you can stack people in a row, so maybe you got like 20 rows of 4 people. So you got 20 rows of 4 people. So you got 80 people pulling the thing. But then you get to the end of that, and from the chart that Ryan showed earlier, it's not like you have infinite room that people can continue indefinitely to pull, because you got an end. You've got an end to the tunnel system there, right? So you can't fit 80 people past that to pull whatever those large boxes were on the end, even if you could do it with 80 people. I'm not saying you could pull 100 tons with 80 people, by the way, but even if you could, there's no room for that many people to pull it.
Yeah, there's no room. And then look at the corners there in some of the spaces. It'd be really hard to go around corners.
Yeah.
So the space conundrum kind of, to me, eliminates this theory of an army of men.
Right.
Hey, Ryan, go back to that map real quick, that map photo right there. This is just a great visual I did on Google Maps for how far that is. You see it says Serapeum of Sakar at the top, and down there is the Aswan Quarry. It's actually, 10-hour car ride.
10-hour car ride. Yeah, going. Yeah, for sure. Going 88 kilometers per hour. Takes you 10 hours to get there. So yeah, 50 miles per hour, 88 kilometers per hour. But so what if they had like a pulley system at the end of the hallway Like what if, but they supposedly didn't have pulleys even back in those times, right? But what if they had like some kind of a pulley system where you get all these ropes and you pull it over the rope, and then the guys are walking the other way down the hallway, pulling the ropes across this pulley system. I mean, I don't know how many people you can fit in there by that method, but I don't know. It doesn't make any sense. It's very illogical and difficult to imagine how they possibly could have done that. And they're supposed to be doing it like on a sandy surface. Is that right? Like a sled on a sandy surface?
Yeah, I mean, there's different, things they'll say, but yeah, they talk about sleds, ramps, and but again, I go back to when you consider if it was ancient dynastic Egyptians in here, I go back to the beginning of carving out the tunnels by hand. Again, you get in there, and we might talk about the Valley of the Kings and these super tunnels down there too. I don't know, when you're there, you go, is it realistic that anyone was carving this out by hand? And then when you consider the limestone powder issue, I don't think so. So you've got that space issue, and then the precision issue. We've talked a lot about the Mohs scale. These boxes mostly are granite diorite, 7+ on the Mohs scale. The dynastic Egyptians, according to the archaeological record, had copper and bronze chisels, stone hammers. Sometimes they'd use dolerite, I believe, to smash against granite. But there's no way those tools are going to extract, let alone precision fashion. Look at the 90-degree angle on that lid, these boxes. And so that's a big conundrum, right? These are precision fashioned. There's a straight edge. I think that's measuring, I don't know if that's inside or outside of the lid and the edge. There's Chris Dunn inside, who you've had on the show, right? Mm-hmm. And he's using his straight edge, and he said something fascinating. And again, this is coming from Chris Dunn. That straight edge has, what is it? It measures to 2 10,000ths parts of an inch. And he said that no matter where he moved that straight edge, whether it was horizontal or vertical, no light could be seen passing through the interface where the straight edge met the stone. Meaning, from a manufacturer's perspective, it was absolute proof of advanced ancient technology in Egypt. It was that precision, right? And so again, you walk into any manufacturer's plant today, you're going to see a product in various stages: rough, semi-finished, finished. And that's what we see in the Serapeum. We see boxes that are like inside there in a finished state. We see boxes semi-finished and boxes that are quite rough and lids that are rough. So yeah, the precision conundrum's a big one, where there is just no doubt in my mind they had some kind of advanced technology they were using to make these boxes. And then it's interesting. So that, the big question then is, well, what was going on here?
Yeah. If it's not hammer and chisel, what was going on? Yeah.
Yeah, what was going on? And I think it probably points to energy production. You've got this subterranean tunnel tubes lined with connective material. You've got these boxes. Again, when we consider the geology of limestone, of the granite, limestone acting like a conduit to a granite, what was really going on here? Well, again, the mainstream says these were just burial chambers for bulls, the sacred bulls of Apis. Well, there's a word called Beyanbit, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. It's this ancient Egyptian word, which means sky metal. It also translates as iron of the sky. And it's referring to meteors. And so the ancient Egyptians, they found meteors, and they recognized that it was the iron inside was a much harder material than the copper and bronze they had, that it was a celestial material. So they saw it as like this sacred thing falling from the heavens. And even the Pharaoh's strength was often considered, it was often referred to as the bowl of the sky. So that's where I'm going. The meteors of iron, iron of the sky, bowl of the sky, it's relating to the constellation Taurus. And so was one of the original functions of these boxes not to house dead sacred bowls physically, but the bowl of the sky, the celestial bowl, meteorites from Taurus that had iron in them. And again, when you start to kind of consider the geology, was this organic, holistic, ancient energy battery type mechanism, pointing to energy production. It's also interesting that when you look at the word apis, for apis bowl, one of the symbols used to spell it is the upside down V, the two chevrons, which look identical to the chevrons on the original entrance of the Great Pyramid. Most people have seen those two epic V's, the original entrance to the Great Pyramid. Well, that kind of relates to Bull Mountain. That's kind of one of the ancient names for the Great Pyramid is Bull Mountain or Taurus Mountain. The point is there's this cosmology relating to Taurus. And is that what the dynastic Egyptians were trying to do in their day? You know, from 3000 BC to, 1500 BC when they say these boxes were made. Actually, I think that's when they say the tunnels were made. I've read that they say the oldest boxes only date to 500 BC. So that's kind of interesting, So again, Taurus, iron, meteors. Like we talked about Peru, they had the meteors or the asteroids in the Temple of the Asteroids. These ancients knew this material was celestial. But did it have properties beyond just mystical to, energy production?
Yeah,
So,
interesting.
Interesting.
Yep.
Interesting stuff.
Yeah, I think Chris Dunn says that they were maybe used for making crystals potentially, and I think there's some energy correlation there as well.
Yeah,
But,
I've heard that too.
Have any of them been found that have not been opened? Like they used dynamite to try to get one of them open, I think, and maybe there was nothing found inside of that. I can't quite remember.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple lids, in boxes I remember that looked like they were exploded inside. I also should mention each lid was cut from the same material the box was. The lid came from the bottom of each box. So just, again, everything was so specific in what they wanted. And we see an example of the lid in the box, I think, at that Cairo Museum, that unfinished box a lot of people have talked about, where you can see it looks like it's flipped over. Yeah, there on the left side is almost, it looks like they were slicing off the lid. And if you see the other side, I've got another picture. It's perfectly hollowed out.
So they hollowed it before they cut the lid off in the steps of the process.
Yeah, so it looks like, from what we can tell, once the box got into its crypt, right? That was where they did the final stage of machining. And so like the one that's stuck in the hallway, I kind of theorize, like, what if, like, let's say, there it is. See how that looks like a box?
That's not in the hallway. This
is the one at the Cairo Museum that we just saw with the light on it.
Yep.
This is the other side. So it looks like almost a serapeum box flipped on its side. There's where they would put the asteroid inside, and on the back here is where they were shearing off the lid to put on top of it. And if you get up close to that, you can see these micro machine marks, especially along the top. This was an unfinished box. I believe they made a mistake, and so they just left it. And if you get up close to the center, I don't know if the video will show it here. Yeah, it might. You can see where the blade rotated, and you can literally see the blade mark. Yeah, right in there, if we get closer, you can see it was like they had two blades, one above and one below.
I think I saw it. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, there it is. Look at that.
Oh, wow. Wow. So, but what is the traditional oh, right. Yeah, there's the tool marks.
And what's crazy about this box?
That's a circular saw.
Yeah.
I mean, clearly those are circular saw marks going both from the bottom and the top. So, and what is the traditional explanation for how they would have cut this?
Well, again, they would, probably say that they used their chisels and hammers and a lot of time. What's crazy is if you're in this Cairo museum, oh yeah, look at that shot of those marks.
Wow, that's the same box?
Same box. So in this museum, this box, just to give context, you walk down the main thoroughfare of the museum, it's all lit up. They've got glass cases of, dynastic Egyptian statues and artifacts. This box is hidden in an old dusty corner, like in a far dusty corner with no light on it or around it, right? It's there, but it's like forgotten. It's there, but it's like nothing to see here. Yet it's one of the most incredible things that you could see in this museum, and there's a lot. You could spend weeks in this museum. This isn't even the new Grand Museum. This is just the Cairo Museum. You could spend weeks in here looking at everything. But this is one of the things. It's just hidden in this corner. There's not even a sign, I believe, or plaque that says anything about it.
So pulling up chat, Mainstream Egyptology says the unfinished granite box in the Cairo Museum is worked using copper saws and tubular drills with abrasive sand. Drill holes plus saw cuts. Craftsmen drilled holes with copper tubes and quartz sand, then linked them to the sawing using copper blades and more abrasive slurry. Tool marks. The visible striations and grooves of the unfinished surfaces match those left by these methods. Why unfinished? Work likely stopped due to a mistake, tool failure, or miscalculation, leaving the lid only cut. So the mainstream view, slow but feasibly possible copper and sand abrasion abandoned mid-process. So they're saying that copper saws. So the tubular drill holes would have been on the interior, I think, and the copper saws would have been what was cutting the lid off of it. But if it was the way that I've seen them recreate those things, it's one big one big saw that kind of goes, and it's like, it takes years for them to go and cut. I mean, it takes forever to get 2 millimeters. It's like a half of a day. But with this, it can't be one of those single saws that two guys are just pulling back and forth, because you've got you got the circle on the top and you got the circle on the bottom. So clearly, if it is a copper saw, they're using some kind of a circular saw that's powered by, I don't know what. I mean, how can you hand power a round circular saw like that to cut off the lid? It doesn't make any sense.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of the great mysteries.
Yeah. So no good explanation. It doesn't.
No
sound
great
like.
explanation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and back to the boxes in the Serapeum. Some of them have scoop marks, and so. But what's interesting is that the scoop marks, if my memory's right, they're all polished on the inside, like the finished boxes, the ones that are finished. Meaning, polishing was the last step once they were in the enclosures, because they polished even the scoops. So why the scoops? It's probably because the ancient engineers saw the box or the lid was developing a really small cracks, and they were scooping them out to avoid a future bigger problem once the thing started vibrating or, doing its thing. But I think that's part of the, trying to solve the part of the mystery about some of the scoops in the lid.
Yeah, for sure. And if you were just scooping out the cracks, I mean, a crack runs in a straight line, potentially a little bit curved, but it's a straight crack. They're scooping out like a large amount of material around the crack as well. But if they were just using like hammers and, rock tools or pounding stones or whatever, it doesn't seem like it would look like a scoop mark, like a rounded scoop mark. It just seems like they would just have addressed the crack,
Right.
like just in it. So it would have just been like a tiny little indentation where the crack used to be, as opposed to these scoop marks that we see in South America, that we see in Egypt at the unfinished obelisk.
Yeah.
I mean, like, you think it's the same civilization that was doing the stuff in Egypt as was doing a lot of South America?
I think it was probably, they had the same knowledge. They might have been different. Obviously, they had some different styles, but they had some kind of possession of the same shared knowledge and some kind of similar tools,
Right.
or ancient machines, whatever you want to call it that. Because, we see the scoops in South America, what looks like the pillowy megalithic blocks.
The nubs.
The nubs. Ollantaytambo has the scoops. And then we see them all the way across the world in Egypt. So, we can definitely, if you want, whenever, we could talk about unfinished obelisk, Egypt's Area 51, all kinds of stuff to talk about in Egypt.
What is Egypt's Area 51?
That's kind of a local legendary name for a site known as Zawat al-Arian. I probably butchered that. It's about 3 miles away from the Giza pyramids. It's a really enigmatic site. As far as I know, still to this day, it's shut off to tour groups and tourism. Archaeologists, I think it was an Italian archaeologist, first excavated this site in the early 1900s, like 1900 through 1904. Here's some pictures of it. What's unique about this site is it's like a gigantic inverted T cut into the limestone bedrock. There's no pyramid or structure on top of it, right? And it's very deep. And as you can see, it's got these 3 areas, stairs descending down, and then it goes to a T. Well, what's fascinating is this oval tub, or what they call an oval tub, on that one side. And you've got these massive granite blocks in the floor. And the only real photos we have, I'm sure there's some others, but these are from the original excavations back in 1904, I think.
Was it just covered in sand, probably? It was just buried?
Probably. I don't know for sure. But I mean, that would have taken forever to excavate.
I know.
Maybe it was kind of partially. The crazy thing I should point out is the Egyptian military took this site over in the 60s. And that's why it has this name of Egypt's Area 51. So apparently the military now controls this site. And unless you've got real special access, nobody's allowed in. But when we look at these old photos, I mean, look at the depth of the massive granite blocks in the floor. And then you've got what they call the oval tub protruding up with like a foot long or maybe 2 feet tall, right, lip. And then what looks like the lid with protruding knobs that would be placed over that. So a very mysterious site.
So they brought in those. Is that the bedrock on the ground, or did they bring in those? Is that granite?
Yeah, those are gigantic colossal granite blocks down there.
So those were moved in then to create the floor of this site.
Yes.
So why would you need a 10-foot tall, 6, 8, 10-foot tall granite block on the floor? I mean,
right, when it's naturally limestone.
right.
Yeah, there's some other shots of the original team down there.
Wow. And so people can't really get to this today? Is that correct? Like there's no tours here. It's like blocked off. It's like military.
Right. Yeah.
So if
From what I know, there's no public tours.
I'm gonna have to beg Zahi to get me into this place.
Yeah. You need to get there.
Yeah. So there's no pictures really, since there's no like modern pictures of this.
I'm sure there's probably a few out there from people that have special access.
Yeah.
But I just think these vintage photos are the best because I think a lot of the stuff that was found in there has all been taken away.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. That's wild. I've never even heard of that site. I don't think I've heard of it.
Now, something else to point out.
What?
According to Muhammad Ibrahim, there was a phrase found inside this structure known as Saba. Do you know what that translates as?
Saba? No, I don't think so.
Stargate. So, again, back to the Egypt's Area 51, you got the government that's taken it over. It's off access. And the word Saba was found inside. So it kind of relates to the mystery. But again, the photos themselves just are so unbelievable. And look at how steep it is with that guy standing on the ledge.
Yeah, totally.
So, I mean, just how they fashion that, the limestone walls, is mind-boggling.
And why? Like, what's the tub for? Like, what would the original purpose of it be? Complete mystery, I guess, right?
Well, one of the common themes is, like in the Great Pyramid, the so-called King's Chamber, you've got the granite box, right? Which I don't believe was a sarcophagus. In the Serapeum that we talked about, you've got the granite boxes, right? Here, we're seeing the same theme of this huge granite floor and this nubbed lid-like structure. At the base of the Saqqara Pyramid, down the shaft, you've got that monster box. I've got a picture of that somewhere, and it's just crazy to behold. So they were into boxes.
Yeah. So you think, I mean, so Stargate, so potentially like the iron metal meteorite potentially being stored in there, or, I mean, what's your wildest theory?
Well, I think repurposed is such a key word. I think so much of what the dynastic Egyptians were doing were repurposing structures that had a different original purpose, right? So like the Great Pyramid might have been this ancient energy generator, but by the time the dynastic Egyptians arrived, 3000 BC, the pharaoh wanted to be buried in there because he wanted to receive the energy from it. And he saw it as like a ticket to the afterlife, right? And so that's why they were repurposing this stuff, being buried inside or tagging statues, tagging boxes in the Serapeum. Ramses II tagging a lot of these statues and sites, reclaiming them. While they might have had an original purpose of energy, I think the dynastic Egyptians were thinking in terms of, stargates, traveling, the cosmos, right? And so it's so much there.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. Really cool. What about levitation in terms of ancient Egypt or this part of the world? Like, what are your thoughts there?
Right. I think it's something we got to talk about because we already, when we were talking about Peru, talked about the ancient Andean legends that talk about Viracocha. Basically, it seems like it's hinting levitating stone, right? Turn it to fire and the biggest blocks could become light as a feather. And then in Egypt, there's a couple different temples that spell this out, but one is called Kamambo Temple down by Aswan. And here you're going to see these incredible 3 scenes. These are pictures I took at this temple. So in scene 1 here, you've got Sobek, the netter, on the left, and you've got this king on the right, right? Well, in between them, I've kind of brightened it up so you can see it is the temple symbolized by the gate symbol. And what do you notice? The temple and the feet of each character is all on the ground level, right? Well, when you go to the next scene, scene 2, the next photo, you're going to see you've got the netter on the left and the king on the right. Now look at the king's hand. Instead of being down, his hand's up, and you see this bead descending from his hand down, and there's an oval now enveloping the gate of the temple, which represents the temple, and sadly it's been defaced, the featured image, almost like they're trying to destroy the sacred knowledge. But what do you notice? The base level of the temple is now floating above the ground. Do you see that? And then when we go to scene 3, it gets even better. We've got the god on the left and the king on the right. His hand is still up. Again, sadly, it's very defaced now. But the bead or the bead of energy that's enveloping the gate of the temple is now literally at waist level. So the thing has floated from the ground to a couple of feet above the ground, now all the way up to, it's I guess the top of it's at their shoulder length. So is this depicting ancient knowledge of some kind of ancient levitation technology? And was the gate of the temple defaced in both these scenes so as to conceal this knowledge?
Wow. So you think intentionally defaced here to conceal the knowledge potentially of levitation, and so you think, levitation could explain how they transported and moved a lot of these big structures?
I think it's something we can't discount.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it was all levitation, but when you're in ancient Egypt at an ancient temple and you're literally seeing a 3-scene depiction of the gate of the temple symbol, which symbolizes this temple, floating in the air, you got to ask yourself, were they trying to tell us something? Were they depicting what the legends they had heard, or even fragments of the technology they still had?
Is there anywhere else is this temple for sure, and these carvings? Where do these date to in traditional mainstream thinking and in your mind?
Yeah, this is Kamambo Temple. We could probably pull it up. I believe this is definitely dynastic Egyptian at the oldest carvings. But again, it's like they're telling us the sacred knowledge.
Like oral tradition passed down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But again, this is not the only temple that depicts this. I've got video and photo of another temple. I'm just blanking on which one it is. There's 1 or 2 others that depict something very similar.
Yeah, I think we have to think about like theories or explanations for how some of these things were built that are not, the most, they're absolutely extraordinary sites and accomplishments, and with not really extraordinary explanations for how it was done. And so the two seem to be majorly disconnected, and that's why we have so many interested people out there into these topics and discussing these topics, because it doesn't make sense to a lot of people that have the ability to think. And, maybe it's possible, but it just seems very unlikely. It just seems like, the hammer chisel thing for the vases, for the polygonal walls, for the boxes. It's just, you gosh, it just seems like there's tools missing at the very least. And certainly, if they could have a way to levitate or at least transport in a much easier way than we can imagine today, 2.4 million stone blocks, or these that weigh, a couple of tons each for the building of the Great Pyramid, or the 100-ton boxes in the Serapeum, then, it seems like it's something that ought to be at least explored. So I appreciate you going down that path. What is the, you made a note of a giant mummified finger in Egypt. This is new to me. I haven't heard about this.
Yeah, I remember seeing the photo of this back in the day and going, what is that? So I did a little deep dive. And again, I wouldn't bring this up if I didn't think this is worth looking into. But this was taken in the 80s by a Swiss gentleman. I think his name was Gregor Spory. So he took a trip to Egypt and met a guy from North Cairo who had a private collection, and told him, "Hey, you want to see this finger I've got? This thing measures 14 inches long."
What?
Okay, 14 inches, I believe, or close to that, and it would have, belonged to a 12-foot plus tall individual, and you can see this leathery looking skin, a bone inside. And according to Gregor, he had to pay $300 to photograph this and see it up close. And the owner told him that it was actually discovered 150 years before present, this was like 2008 or something. And it had been kept in his family's collection. And he paid $300 to see it. And he swore that it was real. He said up close, he could see the fingernail was loose. He said that up close, he could see it was molding in some of the folds and cracked, and that it was a real organism, that it had been cut off with anatomical precision, I think he said. And so, was there giants in ancient Egypt as well? Wild, huh?
Yeah, that's wild. Ryan just pulled up something that said if it was to scale, then it would be a 27-foot tall person almost. So that seems like a stretch. But what if it was like those tridactyls? Those have extraordinarily large fingers. That could it be a different species altogether? Could it be from an animal? Could it be from, a bird or something? Like, it needs to be tested, it looks like.
Ryan, go back to the photo with the Egyptian dollar bill in front of it. I don't know how many inches that dollar bill is, but we could probably do the math. Yeah, maybe it's not quite 14 inches. Maybe it's closer to like 9. But at that angle, you can see the nail. And this photo was before.
Yeah, you can see the nail.
This photo came out way before there was AI.
Right.
And to me,
that's creepy, dude.
Yeah, to me, it just looks real with all the wrappings and there's an even better photo of it there.
That's weird. So who owns this thing?
I don't know where it is today. This, again, was taken by a guy named Gregor Spory from Switzerland. And it was some private collector / grave robber had it in his collection. But
Ryan, let's make a note of this one, man. We're going to Egypt. Let's see if we can find this guy. Okay, cool. What about the Valley of the Kings? What do you think's happening there?
I think there's a lot more going on than we've been told.
Okay.
This is a must-see stop in Egypt, down near Luxor. The Valley of the Kings really started to become famous in the 1920s when King Tut's tomb was found here. And mainstream tells us the mainstream narrative that, this was built during a 500-year period, I believe starting about 1500 BC. And it was simply, burial places for the pharaohs and their nobles, right? But when you get here, I think there's more going on. There's about 65, I believe, tombs, or so-called tombs, right? But some of these are massive. Like that last photo you saw and this photo. Some of these, I wonder if they weren't made to be like the Serapeum, except bigger. For example, right here you see the KV5 tomb. This is known as the son of Ramses II. This thing, just look at the map, but even going inside, you're blown away. It's like an underground mini city. It's two-tiered. It's got huge columns, chambers, ceilings. It's got over 50 rooms. There's hallways with rooms on each side, just like a hotel. This thing is colossal. I don't know if that's still it. So my point is, were these bigger tunnels originally something else? Did Ramses II find this massive tunnel system that might have been an energy production plant like the Serapeum maybe, and repurpose it as a tomb for his sons? And then, did other pharaohs go, hey, let's build tombs here too? You look at this here and you just see, you go inside these. I've got another picture where, these are massive like that. Now, I believe this might have been, repurposed as a tomb again, right, and colored over.
Right. All the glyphs would have been added later.
But a lot of these tombs, and I've got other pictures, they dwarf the Serapeum. And I'll guess what was found inside of a lot of them originally? Granite boxes. And so were these bigger tunnels something else? Were they, were these originally an energy production plant like the Serapeum? And or were these some kind of apocalyptic subterranean bunkers that they were building out to survive the coming solar disasters that were maybe coming more frequently?
So potentially like Darren Kuyu or something, like that these were already there. These weren't dug out by the dynastic Egyptians, that these were just inherited and found, that these could have been either underground cities or just doomsday bunkers.
Well, yes, and to clarify now, I do believe the dynastic Egyptians probably made the majority of the tunnels in the Valley of the Kings.
Okay.
But I'm theorizing, did they not do these big giant ones?
Okay.
Because if you actually look at like King Tut's tomb, the most famous of the pharaohs, his tomb is so inferior to what we're seeing here. It's just like small. It's got 2 chambers. It's all wavy, like it was made with hand tools in a hurry. But then you've got this, which looks like a subterranean city. So again, kind of my passion is there more than we've been told, right? Whether it's Peru, whether it's Egypt, whether it's the Serapeum or the Valley of the Kings. And I think that might be what we're seeing with the largest tunnels. I'm not saying all of them, but the big, colossal ones. It's almost like an underground, you could drive a truck through it, a semi.
And how many are there like that? Like, is there one? Is there 4?
Oh boy, I should know that. The KV5 is the big one.
Okay.
But I would say, there's just a handful of these big ones.
Okay. Yeah, that's crazy. That's insane. That's like an underground city.
Yeah, you look at that. If you didn't know anything, if it didn't say son of Ramses II, if you just looked at that as a blueprint, and asked an engineer, what am I looking at? Are they going to tell you that's a tomb?
Right. No, the boss works down at the last chamber. That's where he lives. Yeah, everybody's got their own function and their own operating space. Yeah, it looks like an underground bunker for sure for like, hundreds of people potentially.
Yeah.
Interesting. That's a cool theory. I hadn't heard that one.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's cool.
And then we've got to talk about the Aswan Quarry real quick.
Good.
That's cool.
Let's do it. Yeah. Yeah, perfect.
To me, this is one of the smoking guns for lost technology in ancient Egypt.
Okay.
Again, most of the granite we find in Egypt came from the Aswan Quarry, this rose granite. So the rose granite inside the Great Pyramid, the rose granite inside the Valley Temple, or it's called the Valley Temple, some call it the Sphinx Temple. That's one of the most must-see structures in Giza. Some of the biggest blocks I've ever seen there. If you have any pictures of the Valley Temple, Ryan, pull that up. But there's spots where the blocks, I mean, we're talking, they have to be 100-ton blocks at least. They're so tightly fit, you can't even see hardly the seam, which is separating the blocks. It almost looks like one. The point is, all of that came from 10 hours away. Car ride, right? So just crazy to consider. I should also state that there's so many anomalies. One of my favorite things to see down near Luxor is the Colossi of Memnon statues. The two twin titans that are like 7 stories high. That's that's a special limestone. Guess where it comes from? The Giza area. So they were so transportation was apparently not a problem to them. That these giant statues way down near Luxor, the limestone material came from the Cairo area, according to Muhammad Ibrahim. So again, it would have been easier to grab limestone by the Valley of the Kings.
Yeah.
But they wanted the specific limestone by Cairo, which has a name to it. So
like why?
Yeah.
Why? It would have been so much easier unless it was so easy for them to transport. Then why? What would the necessity for that specific stone be?
Yeah. Those are just massive. The one on the right's severely been repaired, but the one on the left looks way more original, cut from a single solid piece of this limestone. You get up close though, and you can see the muscle tone in the legs, still the 3D precision, deep embedded symbols, as we might talk about. But back to the Aswan Quarry, to me, it's one of the smoking guns for lost technology, because you get there. And many people don't realize there's not just one unfinished obelisk. Yeah, so the unfinished obelisk here, I think it measures about 150 feet long. It's 1,200 tons if finished. And it's like it was stuck in time, right? Again, this is rose granite. There's me standing in front of it. You can see the scoop marks on the top and along the left side. But what's crazy is when you get down and you walk around it, this one and the one behind it, look at what you see. You see dark red lines that go from the top of, the rock all the way down into the scoop marks. And this dark reddish color is, a sign of possible excessive heat, like from an ultrasonic cutting tool. And if you go to the next picture, Ryan, you're going to see in these next photos, this is the more baby obelisk behind it. This thing has one continuous scoop mark from the top of where the tool went in all the way down underneath it. And each scoop mark is about 1 meter wide.
Wow.
Look at that. So it was like a machine went like this from the top down underneath and could extract. That's the best photo I've got.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So it's crazy when you go here, and if you're with a mainstream tour guide, they'll stop you at the entrance, and they explain how they were doing this. And I think they used to kind of say it was chisels and hammers. Now they're saying it was the dolerite balls, just rocks. They're not even saying it was like a tool, a chisel. They will take this dolerite stone and they'll bash it on rose granite and they'll say this is how they were doing it. Well, for fun, we always have our groups do it. We'll take the biggest, strongest guy and we'll say, grab that and bash on the rose granite for 1 minute straight, you know. And the guy's sweating because it's so hot.
Blisters.
He's going a whole minute straight and all he can do is barely scratch it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it's such an insult to our intelligence.
It is. It is.
They had some kind of ancient machine.
They stick to that though, man. They're so like, if you try to challenge that dolerite pounding stone thing, people go crazy, like crazy. It's like, it's the craziest thing.
But all they have to do is try it, right?
Right.
To realize how insane it is.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so you mentioned the red marks that go from the top to the bottom, and it reminds me of the red marks that exist in South America between the polygonal blocks of stone. And it goes back to that theory that I heard on ancient architects of softening and using some kind of acid or paste to soften the stone so that they could fit together and form their own shape. I mean, if this is significantly ancient and it is the same civilization or technology or tools or acid or whatever, it's just interesting that we're finding red marks on the stone in Egypt, and we're finding you can see it easily when earthquakes happen and the rocks in South America separate. You can see kind of like that red shade of something, and people say it's lichen, but it doesn't look a lot like lichen when it's in between the stones. So and it's only at the seams. It's only like, it's kind of at the seams. And if you put that on the front of the stone, could that have created a nub? Could it have softened it enough to kind of pull out, under extreme heat or whatever? Could it have, could that be how those nubs were made, as a kind of a pressure release for when the stone was being squeezed together or squeezed down from another stone that was set on top of it? So it's pretty interesting that it's the same, at least the same coloration and the same kind of, scoop marks and just weird features that we see on, limestone granite.
Right.
And, it's just weird.
Yeah. I mean, was it due to excessive heat or, like you said, some kind of chemicals?
Yeah. Or both.
Yeah.
Maybe
or both.
Maybe both was the process, Yeah. So it's just weird. There's the scoop marks in South America. Yeah, you just don't get that kind of like those depressions and just the perfect fit together of all those stones just by pounding on them with a hammer. You're there for 20 million years if you're doing that.
Right.
So, yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Pretty cool for sure. Well, good. Yeah, I mean, I know there were a couple of other topics maybe before we close out. I know we've got a little bit of time better sitting here than at an airport probably. So
yeah, whatever works.
Good. Yeah. Maybe we scoot back for a minute because there were two places, Easter Island and Mexico, that you had on your list that you wanted to talk about. So you'd mentioned the forbidden history of Easter Island. What did you mean by that?
Yeah. Great question. I was just there in May. It was such an incredible experience. Going to Easter Island, it's a dot out in the Pacific, smaller than Washington, D.C. And it was actually shocking how small it was from the plane. You can see the whole length of the island, obviously, but as you're getting close, it's just a lot smaller than I imagined. But here are these 1,000 megalithic Moai statues on this island out in the Pacific. And it's just an incredible place. It was much more beautiful than I anticipated. I just pictured it more desolate, even though I'd seen pictures, but it was just a beautiful island. It feels like you're on a volcano. There's just volcanic outcroppings everywhere. But it is amazing because I believe there's so much more to this island's history, again, than we've been led to believe. Easter Island, is probably its most famous name because that's where the first recorded European, Jacob Roggeveen, he discovered it. I think it was 1722 on Easter Sunday. So they named it Easter Island. The local name is Rapa Nui. But it's an incredible place. You have these moai. You've got many of them that stand along the coast facing inward. But then you've got many more that are just in the most random places. It's like they were abandoned in transport, right? Like something happened and the project stopped. And there's so many legends concerning Easter Island or Rapa Nui of the long years. And when you dig into these legends, that's really fascinating because I lean towards the long years represented the oldest ancients that lived on this island. And Moai actually means the living faces of our ancestors. So it's all about deifying their ancient ancestors who had these very interesting genetic features, right? As we'll get into. But Easter Island is an incredible place. There was a lost language on the island known as the Rongo Rongo tablets. These were just copies upon copies of, I think, the originals. The only ones we have are like wooden fragments. So they're not ancient in themselves. But sadly, this language was lost, right? But what we have are the memories of the elders that were connected to certain symbols on the tablets. Isn't that interesting? Mm. So they've passed down the memories connected to certain symbols. So that's why they can say, well, this Rongo Rongo tablet is connected with this legend. So we have these legends of the long years versus the short years. And we've got these crazy statues, this lost language. We've got megalithic walls on Rapa Nui. There's one left at Ahu Vanapu right there, which looks eerily similar to what you'd see in Cusco, right? This is made of basalt. So that's like a 6 on the Mohs scale. Everything else mostly is made of the volcanic tuff, which is like a 3, way softer. So Captain Cook, his 1770 expedition, it's interesting to read. I love reading the old ship logs of the old explorers. Captain Cook, the great explorer, he marveled at the precision megaliths that he was seeing on the island. And he compared them to anything superior in England. And he even talked about megalithic walls along the coast that have all since disappeared. Sadly, to earthquakes and the pounding surf, they've fallen into the sea, right? And so a lot of people still today don't realize there's megalithic, precision, mortarless, polygonal wall on Easter Island. And I've even made a side-by-side photo I've put on social media that compares this right here with the same stone in Cusco. They're almost identical. So obviously, I think there's an influence that came from the east, which is Peru, right? There's legends that the Easter Island was once covered with, they're basically describing a megalithic roadway system that interlocked so closely together you couldn't see the edges. So did that have something to do with the transportation of the Moai? The majority of the Moai are found up by the Aswan Quarry. It's this kind of the highest point on the island where there was this old volcano and this huge shaft. And you can still see some of the unfinished Moai up there, right? So one of the big anomalies or questions is, how did they move these Moai, you know? And legends state that the Moai walked to their places, right? Well, I know that sounds goofy. When you get into it, the legends also say the Moai channeled the sacred energy called mana. And the mana would only start flowing once the Moai was completely finished, set in place, and its eyes put in. All the Moai apparently once had eyes. which archaeologists didn't realize until like the 1930s when they found a complete eye set. So they had
what were they?
inlaid coral eyes.
Coral.
Yeah, and something else. The pupil was something else, but the white part was coral. So they had these inlaid eyes, and they apparently had this sacred spiritual power called mana. Legends say they walked, and legends say they were connected to this sphere that could channel the energy. Well, what's interesting on Easter Island, you can pull up the picture of the sphere, Ryan, is one of the most sacred spots on the island is this sphere known as the Navel of Light. I think it's Rapa Nui name is Te Kito Pura or something like that. I might have that backwards. I think these other rocks were brought later, the small ones, but the big one's original. This thing possesses magnetic properties. If you spin a compass over that, it's going to go wild. So it's interesting, the legends of a sphere, and here is the sphere. And so I kind of wonder if this wasn't part of the original megalithic civilization. This was something they had made, brought, used. So you got all these anomalies in Easter Island. And then you've got three or four different kinds of moai. Pull up that short-eared squatting moai, Ryan, right there. This is one of a very few moai we've got that has, just kind of a normal round head and shorter ears than the other ones. So this, I believe, represents the short ears. So on Easter Island, you're going to hear a lot about the long ears and the short ears. Now, the mainstream narrative states that, the Polynesians settled Easter Island not that long ago. 800 years ago, 800 AD, right? I believe the Polynesians probably did make this, and it represents their time. And I saw a couple other heads like this. Then you've got the red hat wearing moai. Now these are volcanic tough. You can see they got longer ears, and they've got the red hats, which actually symbolizes red hair. Puka.
And
Polynesians don't have red hair.
Right.
Right?
That's original on the top, and that's also volcanic tuff. The red?
The red is made of a different material.
Huh, okay.
I'm blanking on what that is. It called? Blanking on what that's called.
But that's original.
Yes. And you can see these red top knots kind of scattered all over. A lot of them have fallen off. So I believe you had the short-eared statues, right? Are the newest, that represent the Polynesian short ears from the west, which relates to, there's a legend of King Hoto Matua, the first king of Easter Island. Legends say he lived in another land that was ravaged by war and cataclysms, and so he fled with 300 of his followers, boarded 2 ships, and they arrived at Easter Island. And so he's kind of gets credit with founding Easter Island, and the Polynesians founding Easter Island. Yet I found oral traditions that state when he landed it at Akena Beach, which I've been to, they found a graveyard near the beach. Which, if that's true, that means the island had already been settled, right? So the point is, you've got the Polynesians from about 800 AD showing up. They probably came even earlier, though, because archaeologists have now found bananas, like petrified, from 3,000 years old. So you had the short ears, but then you have those top knot wearing moai, which are representing the long ears with red hair. And this connects us to Easter Island and the Paracas with red hair and the Inca nobles with red hair, right? And again, strange genetics. We talked all about that, right? All these moai, aside from the short-eared ones, have these strange genetic anomalies. Something else to point out, Ryan, is pull up the picture of that wood carving with the weird genetic properties. It's a statue-looking thing.
How did it get red? I wonder that whatever that other material is. We'll have to, maybe Ryan can.
It might be called scory. It's yeah, that might be the name of it.
Okay.
It's a piece, kind of another type of volcanic reddish material, I think.
The Pucao hats were carved from a red scoria, a lighter reddish. Okay, so it's a lighter reddish volcanic rock, also quarried on the island. Cool.
Yeah, so let me pause here on this. So there was a bunch of missionaries that lived on Easter Island in the 1800s, probably late 1700s. A lot of them documented their experience there and their findings. And a lot of these missionaries talked about how many of the inhabitants had strange genetic features, skulls, and bumps on the back of their necks. Well, this is one of the 1800 era wooden carvings we have that are still left in some museums that depict these strange anomalies. You can see he's got a weird bump on the back of his neck. And so even Jacob Rokoveen, I'll save the best for last, he even talked about how, like these missionaries, many of these locals looked way more European than Polynesian, right? And so, again, that's another piece of the mystery. So we had the short ear moai. We had the red top knot wearing moai, which I believe were and then we have the big ones in the quarry. Pull up that photo right there. So this is the biggest one. I think he measures about 100 feet long.
Wow.
And would have been, probably close to 1,000 tons. But you can see it was in a semi-finished state in the quarry, right? So the top was done, the sides were done, they'd extract the bottom, and they've found a bunch of basalt pickaxes all over the quarry. So that seems how they were making these ones. Basalt's the hardest stone on the island. Again, it's about a 6 on the Mohs scale. This is way softer, 3. It's still mind-boggling, though. Even if they got the bottom detached, how are they getting it up and moving it? When you go to the other photos of them sticking out of the mud, right? Thor Heyerdahl, the great explorer, he was the one in the 50s who first began the major excavations. And he's the one that revealed to the world that the bodies had heads. But what's crazy is...
So the heads had bodies.
I'm sorry, the heads had bodies.
Yeah. Yep.
Look at how massive that is.
I know, that's wild.
What's wild, though, is most of them are stuck vertically standing straight up.
Right.
Which you wouldn't think would happen with earthquakes, with tsunamis.
Right.
So it's like they were intentionally buried, yet we don't necessarily find evidence of intentional burial.
No.
So what was going on?
It's almost like a landslide or something, or something like a wave or mud or something. But the base of them must have been secured into the ground well enough to withstand whatever it was. If it was a landslide or or potentially just growth from, if they really are 12,000 years old, then you're talking about the growth of the land as trees grow and everything piles up and gets compact down. That's probably 10,000 years worth of growth.
Yeah, is that the sedimentation buildup of thousands versus hundreds? Right. So if the mainstream is telling us, well, this was made, 800 AD. Yeah. Well, is that much buildup really going to happen? Now, it's important to point out, as Graham Hancock points out, that, during the last ice age, the sea levels were probably 400 feet lower. And so were the ancient builders living along the sea? Was the island way bigger than it is now? And would we discover even more down there? So that's kind of the mystery about how they made them. But now I should point out, there's one other type of moai most people don't know exist. So we've seen the short ear. We've seen the small top knot wearing. We've seen the large the biggest moai here in the quarry and near the quarry. But these are made of volcanic tuff. But lastly, we've got the basalt statue. There's about 14 of these. Of the 800 plus moai we know of, there's only about 14 basalt ones. Now this one's in the British Museum. This was taken from Easter Island and brought here to Queen Elizabeth, I believe, in the 1850s, 60. But look at this. This is way harder material. It's only about 8 feet tall. This one weighs 4 tons, so not as big. This thing is, I believe, I lean towards this is definitely 12,000 plus years old. Precision. I've got pictures of the back of it. You can see a face on its the top of its head. Again, despite the weathering, the transport, the travel, the erosion, this thing is it's a precision masterpiece. Now, what's weird is if you go to Easter Island, it's almost impossible to find and see a basalt statue. You'll see the short ears, you'll see the top knot little ones, you'll see the quarry ones. You can't find one. We tried. And they said, it's on such a remote location, you'd have to go by horseback. And we said, well, isn't there one in your museum? Yeah, but the museum's shut down due to some legal thing. The point is you have to go all the way to the British Museum
to see one.
Doesn't that kind of seem weird?
It's weird, yeah, for sure. But there's known to be 14 of them?
I believe there's about 14.
And the other 13 are on the island itself?
I think so.
Okay.
Something like that. There's
Okay.
about 14.
Give or take.
The British have one. And the others, we couldn't see them. That's all I can tell you. But these are incredible. So here's where I end with Easter Island.
What's coming out of that guy's mouth?
Yeah, look at that.
That's weird.
Were the precision basalt statues made by the original master builders that likely came from Peru or with the same guys building the megaliths in Peru? They had ancient lost technology, let's say 12,000 plus years ago. They were carving these basalt statues with a harder material the island doesn't have now, right? Or with tools. I think this was the long years, the original master builders making these, the same guys who made the basalt megalithic wall we saw, right? Then you had a second epoch, kind of like in Peru, the Hanan Pacha. You had a second epoch of guys who came along and built the biggest statues we see on a volcano. You can pull that picture up, Ryan. They were using their basalt chisels, and they were deifying, moai means the faces of our ancestors.
Right.
They were depicting this other lost civilization. This is what I lean towards. They were making these gigantic moai in remembrance. They were even taller than the basalt ones. But I don't believe in any way they could make the basalt ones with basalt tools. Right? And then I think you had the Polynesians coming along 1000 AD or whatever, 800 AD, and they were making the smaller moai statues with the red hair. And they were doing their best to replicate the big ones, if that makes sense. But the smaller top-knot red-haired ones were actually deifying an ancient class that might have been alive at the same time. And that's what we'll get into. So I talked about the strange genetics that some of the missionaries talked about and other explorers of the inhabitants. Mm-hmm. Well, Jacob Roggeveen, this original Dutch explorer who discovered it in 1722, he said some crazy stuff in his ship logs. So in the late 1700s, there was a guy named Alexander Dalrymple. He was a British geographer. and he worked for the British East India Company. He was a big deal in his day, made maps, traveled the sea. He was an expert in seafaring. Well, in his later years, he wrote a book. I'm trying to remember the title. It was called, The Historical Chronicles of the Many Voyages and Discoveries in the South Pacific, something like that. Okay. So in his book, he's documenting all the great explorers, that went before him, including Jacob Roggeveen. So he gets to the part about Jacob Roggeveen, and he's included everything they're writing about their travels. And so Roggeveen makes several fantastic remarks. So first, and I'll backtrack a little bit. First, when they're on the island, he says that they see 300 inhabitants. I think he called them locals, dressed in body paint, feathers, long earlobes, worshiping before the statues with fire and doing these strange rhythmic dances. So I just love the visual that gives us of what this guy was seeing in the 1720s, 1722. But it gets crazier. So backtracking, as they're approaching Easter Island, Roggeveen and his crew are in a couple ships. And they basically say they see a small boat ship coming towards them, manned by one guy. And they remark about how amazing the construction was of this vessel. And they say the guy in the boat was about 12 feet tall. And he was coming out to like, what's going on? He showed no fear.
12 feet. He's afraid of nothing.
This is what Roggeveen's saying, right? They get on the island. Aside from seeing the 300 people doing the strange dances, Roggeveen says two other statements that just, to me, are crazy. This is the forbidden history of Easter Island. You won't hear anywhere else. Roggeveen describes that he saw a separate priest class on Easter Island that venerated the statues and served them as the general population didn't. He said the general population was of a mixed descent. And I'm paraphrasing here, but he said the priest class was extremely large. Was very large, had extremely white skin, red hair, and long ears. And so he made a distinct remark that this was a separate class. Again, very large, extremely white.
Species almost.
Right?
Yeah.
And this was the priesthood of Easter Island that served the statues. It was like almost the surviving remnant, right? Well, I did more research down this rabbit hole and found some missionaries that seemed to talk about a same priest class. One guy, I don't know if his name was Father Rasal, one of the missionaries, he talked about how a priest class was cannibals and would eat children in the name of their god Make. That was the oldest god there. There's you can find these basalt carvings all over the island with this strange chimeric, half human animal hybrid looking creature. Sometimes it just shows the mask of Make. And then you find a lot of these Birdman petroglyphs. So I should note that Thor Heyerdahl, his team found the Birdman in different instances carved over the Make, meaning Make was probably way older. And then the Birdman religion came later, if that makes sense. Anyway, so other missionaries talked about this priest class being cannibals, and they even found remains, sacrificial pits and bones and stuff like that.
Probably not cannibals, I guess, if they're a different species, right? I mean, it's interesting. I mean, it's like the Lovelock Cave. You know, they're eating humans, and it's right. But was that Homo sapien or was it something different? I don't know.
And I've got a screenshot of this. If you see that text there on the screen, on the bottom right. Yeah, that was it right there. Roggeveen, I'll literally read it to you. Look at what he says here. This is from the Voyages of Jacob Roggeveen. Bottom right paragraph. Thus far, my narrative will gain credit because it contains nothing uncommon. Yet I must declare that all these savages are of a more than gigantic size, for the men being twice as tall and thick as the largest of our people. They measured one with another the height of 12 feet, so that we could easily, who will not wonder at it, without stooping, have passed between the legs of these sons of Goliath. According to their height, so is their thickness, and are all one with another very well proportioned, so that each could have passed for a Hercules. But none of the wives came up to the height of the men, being commonly not above 10 or 11 feet. The men had their bodies painted with a red or dark brown, and the women with a scarlet color. What do you think of that?
I mean, this isn't like some fiction narrative, right? This is like a documentation of this visit.
Yeah, the Dutch Voyages of Jacob Roggeveen, compiled by Alexander Dalrymple,
Wow.
1770.
Unbelievable.
So,
Denisovans were huge, man.
right?
They were huge. They were some big people.
And were they alive in the 1700s?
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Could have been. I mean, why not?
Yeah. I should also state, Thor Heyerdahl, I read his book, and, he made all these great discoveries, like that the heads have bodies. But his greatest discovery, he said he made, was the fact that he said there was 2 different epochs of civilization on Easter Island. He found megalithic walls that were buried far below the earth. He also found caves. There's vast cave systems. I got to go in one, which was awesome. But Heyerdahl described subterranean chambers he found with literally vaulted ceilings, and how inside were ancient stone shelves with skulls, skeletons, and what he called grotesque monster carvings made of, the lava stone. So it's just crazy what he was finding. He said this stuff was so ancient that when he touched it, it would just turn to dust almost. Some of the artifacts and skeletons. But he said his greatest discovery was that there was 2 epochs of time on Easter Island. He said there was a civilization so ancient and advanced that he said they had to come from Peru. And that by the time the second civilization showed up, everything was in an advanced state of ruin, and that they did their best to rebuild. But he said in no way were their building techniques even close to the original. And we see that on a lot of the Ahu platforms that the Moai stand on. It's like they're recycled stones that they plop together and then pushed the fallen Moai up on. Because in these Ahu platforms, you'll even see ancient Moai heads in some of them, like along with the blocks. So there's so much there regarding the forbidden history of Easter Island.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Yeah, that's good stuff, man.
Yeah.
And you got to consider, could the people have come from the West? Could this have been people that were traveling, more pre-Younger Dryas that came from the West, came to Easter Island, and then went to Peru? I mean, there's the banana potentially came from the east. I think it was ginger maybe that was found on Easter Island. Ginger is the furthest east that Easter Island's the furthest east that ginger's ever been found, and Easter Island's the furthest west that bananas have ever been found, I think. So it's one of those interesting. Ryan might correct me on exactly but I think it's ginger and bananas. But yeah, I mean, if people were circumnavigating the world from sweet potato and ginger, thank you. Yeah, that's cool. Potentially they were coming from Papua New Guinea, Australia. There's a lot of that DNA that exists within South America. Maybe Rapa Nui was just a pit stop on the way to Peru, potentially.
No, I mean, that's thinking 3D. Yeah, even going further back. That That's definitely a possibility. I think in terms of what the mainstream's trying to tell us about how, probably the Polynesians from the West just discovered and made it all. You got guys like Captain Cook and Heyerdahl saying, no, we think the oldest stuff came from the East. But yeah, you're saying even before that. Yeah, I get it. Something else to point out before I forget, Heyerdahl made another crazy discovery. I call it the Alien Queen. It's a basalt statue. I got a picture of it, Ryan, somewhere in that Easter Island folder. Heyerdahl was so shocked and amazed by this discovery because he said there was nothing that he'd ever seen in all of Polynesia like it. Severely weathered and eroded, but his literal remarks were that you would have thought this fell from outer space.
What is it? What is that stone even?
It's basalt.
Is it?
Yeah.
It's really light. That's cool. That's cool.
So many crazy discoveries on Easter Island, Rapa Nui. It's funny. I'll say Easter Island and people get so mad.
Yeah.
So I guess I try to say both.
Yeah. I didn't realize it was named after Easter. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
But so what is the story with this one then? Is there more to it?
Well, some legends say this was King Hotamatua's wife. You can see it's got a belly button.
Poor guy.
Fingers pointing down below. I've read that this is basalt, so if it really is, I believe I believe that's probably not the case.
Yeah.
I believe this is depicting the hybrids of the oldest civilization. But that's another thing to point out, Ryan. I've got another photo of the fingers, which is a crazy anomaly on the other statues.
Look at her hands down like by her belly, like kind of like Göbekli Tepe.
Exactly.
Kind of like that, and the other statues at Rapa Nui, of course. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, look at those fingers. Now, here's a question for you, Matt.
Yeah.
So mainstream will tell us...
Looks like a 14-inch finger right there.
Mainstream will tell us, well, these are just long fingernails because this was royalty who didn't work with their hands.
Oh, okay, sure.
Do you lean towards that, or that this is depicting some kind of genetic issue?
I mean... It's either artistic, to say those are fingernails might be, that's interesting. I never knew that was actually the mainstream explanation for why the fingers were so long on some of these statues, that they were fingernails. I've never heard of that before. Yeah, who knows? Who knows, right?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, genetic issue, fingernails. It is interesting that the thumbnail looks like it's kind of curved up on both sides, but that's also something that your thumb naturally does. It kind of tilts up for most people. Yeah, that's crazy, man. That's really cool. I learned a lot about Rapa Nui from this conversation. Thank you. Well, good, man. It's been a fantastic conversation for sure. I've thoroughly enjoyed this.
Good.
Got a lot out of it and learned a lot for sure. Are there any other final kind of closing topics or things that you wanted to discuss?
Oh, only if you got a few more minutes.
Yeah, sure. Why not? Yeah.
What else did I have? Oh, I mean, there's so much. You mentioned Mexico.
Yeah.
I did a video recently on my YouTube. It's on Spotify too, of this strange artifact. It's known as the Ashkintuk artifact, and I've got some pictures of that in the Mexico folder there, Ryan. But yeah, out in Mexico at this site called Ashkintuk, we got that. Go to that first photo. This is a early 1900s photo of excavations going on at this site. And we've got this guy, maybe he was one of the excavators or workers, standing next to these strange artifacts. And shout out to Cliff Dunning from Earth Ancients. He posted this, and he's a great Mayanist. And so, man, when I saw that, when you think you've seen it all, you see something like this. And so I kind of did a deep dive on this based on some of the stuff Cliff said. But here's what's crazy. So it seems like we've been spoon-fed a history of the Maya that doesn't include the oral traditions of their living ancestors. Because if you talk to them, they'll tell you that, there was a first people. There was a pre-Maya civilization that might go back as far as 6,000 years, right? Again, we're talking forbidden history. We're talking lost technology. And even in Mexico. So at this site, nobody knew about it. In Madrid, Spain, there was an account in some royal dusty archives that a Spanish monk, Antonio de Real, made of a site he found on the Yucatan. He was talking about this site before it had a name. And he said he found this vast labyrinth there. Well, nobody thought much of it until archaeologists finally found it, named it Ashkintuk, which means place of the three cutting suns, I believe, and they found the labyrinth. And I've seen videos. It's mostly closed off now, but a pretty elaborate, ancient subterranean labyrinth at this site. There's also some remnants of ancient pyramids and temple structures. But again, we have this 19th century or this early 1900s photo of this figure coming off this column. We have almost nothing like this in all of, Maya history. This guy looks like, what does that look like he's wearing to you?
He's like either armor or he's like a mummy wrapped in something. Like, I don't know. He looks like the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, honestly.
Right? He's got this squarish robot looking head, this angular mouth, big ears, bulbous eyes. Looks like he's wearing a suit or armor, and then he's got this belt around his stomach with this circular object coming off of it. What is that and what's going on? And so, is this from an earlier period before the classic Maya? Or were the classic Maya depicting the legends they had concerning the earlier civilization, right? The point is, this is special, and we can see the other photo of it in the modern day museum in Mexico somewhere. It's still in pretty great shape, but it's so unique. He also has something around his neck, but that circular device, could that have been used to communicate telepathically? Was it ancient red light therapy? Who knows? Was it a weapon? But to continue this topic, the next photo, Cliff actually owns this. So you've got your vases, he's got his Mayan astronauts.
Wow.
Does that not look, I should ask you, what does that look like?
Yeah, it looks like he's wearing a spacesuit. Okay, he's like an astronaut. That's what it looks like.
And we're told that this was, either a shamanic outfit or a ball cord outfit.
Right.
If that doesn't look like a spacesuit, I don't know what does. The next picture, this is about 1,000-year-old.
If it was a shamanic outfit, and a lot of times, so you see those cave drawings, and a lot of times you see the the antennas coming out of the people's heads, and the mainstream thing for that is this is a shamanic outfit, and you see them across the world. You see them in South America, you see them across the ocean, but if that was a shamanic outfit, the astronaut-looking thing, what would they have made that suit out of? What would the construction material have been in real life for those for that group of people 1,000+ years ago?
It's a great question.
Yeah,
I have no clue.
I have no clue either.
Yeah. But this one here, they say, is a ball cord outfit. Are you going to dunk a ball in that outfit?
A ball cord outfit,
at Chichen Itza. Great photo. Ryan, you got to send me that later. So this is about, I believe, 1,000-year-old figurine. Like if you go to Chichen Itza, they've got the ball court area where they say they played this ancient game where they would take this ball and they'd throw it through the round the round hoops.
Right.
So that's what their most mainstream says this is some kind of outfit. But again, that doesn't seem to make a lot of sense.
Like pads or something. Like, I mean, yeah.
It almost looks like, this guy is wearing some kind of technology, especially when you look at the back. Almost a jetpack.
There's that's stone. There's no way to date that. Wow, that's weird, dude.
Yeah, I mean, look at the elongated skull he's got.
Yeah.
And then as we go down to these other pictures,
And mainstream will just say he's just wearing a helmet or a hat or something. Yeah.
so it'd be one thing if there was just one or two of these, but again, this is a theme. Here's the lid of Lord Pakal's sarcophagus at Palenque. This was one of the greatest discoveries of the modern era, I believe in the 1950s. Underneath that, the actual stone is massive, multi-ton. It kind of looks similar to a Serapeum box, but curved. But this lid, everybody's probably seen it. I've got another photo of it next, but it looks like he's almost in a craft, right? There's a great colorized picture. His hands are grabbing, it looks like a device. He's sitting on a seat in a thing that looks like it's moving. The next photo kind of backs that one up. This is Lord Pakal on a stela. You notice anything in this photo besides Lord Pakal that grabs your attention? Top right corner.
Yeah, what is that?
Right there, top right corner.
Ah.
Kind of looks like another guy in a helmet.
Yeah.
So, again, the bigger thing is, were the classic Maya depicting, the oral traditions they had of a earlier pre-Maya civilization that did have technology? And then we go down to the next photo. We got this famous Monument 19, I think it is, from the Olmec. Again, looks like he's got some kind of helmet or breathing device on. He's in a suit, holding a bag in some kind of craft.
For sure. Yeah. No, I mean, and the snake is like an ancient depiction of a comet or a meteor or something like coming through the sky, right? So it's like this is the bringer of the knowledge. The knowledge is in the handbag, and the snake people would see celestial objects traveling through the sky, and they would think that was that was like the gods coming down. So it's this is wild. This is wild.
And when you go back to Lord Pakal there at Palenque, he's a very interesting character. When you kind of start looking at the depictions of him, some say he was polydactyl and had extra digits. He had an elongated skull, and there are some reports that he was like a 7-footer when they excavated his tomb. Now, what's kind of weird is
his body somewhere that?
Well, that's just it. We can't see his body, and there's almost no photographs. When you look up for his body in the skull in the tomb, you see everything but the head. It's almost like it's kind of been blacked out. So very anomalous guy.
But it's not in some museum today or something?
Oh, it's somewhere, but you're not allowed to see it.
Huh.
We're not even allowed to see his original sarcophagus.
Wow, that's weird.
It's all a replica.
Really?
Yeah.
That's weird, man. So what are people hiding then? Is it like it's in Mexico somewhere then?
Yeah, I don't exactly know where it is actually.
Okay. We'll have to look that up.
Yeah, but I believe the one that you see on site is a modern day replica of the original. But the original is, the crazy part is it looks like it predates everything else.
Can you ask chat that, Ryan? Where's the body? And we can keep talking, but
Yeah.
I'm curious as to what I didn't realize that was a mystery that it, because that's the 20th century, that it was excavated in the 20th century.
It was the 50s, yeah.
Yeah. So we should
Yeah, it was one of the
have
greatest discoveries of all time.
that. Yeah. Still located in the original tomb beneath the Temple of Inscriptions. His tomb was discovered, unlike some other royal remains that were moved to museums, Beall's body has remained in situ. However, many of the artifacts in the sarcophagus lid are protected and have been studied extensively. Replicas of the lid can be seen in museums. So,
I think the point is we can't see it.
right. Yeah, why is it still in there, and why can't, and are there images of it that exist? His body is still in the sarcophagus for several reasons tied to archaeology, of course. Preservation. So archaeological integrity. What's the, at the bottom, in short, his body remains in the sarcophagus to preserve its fragile state, to maintain the archaeological and spiritual integrity of the site, and to honor cultural respect for his body. So why can't you take a picture? Are there pictures of his body?
Yes, I think that's a recreation.
It's giving up pop-ups, so we can't even see the answer. Yes, there are photographs related, though I've not found any credible, of course. Yeah, they exist. I just don't have any. Why there aren't any images of the body itself? Because the tomb is sealed and protected. Access is limited. The body is still in its sarcophagus, almost buried. Yeah, so there's no pictures. I mean, that's crazy. That's crazy. I mean, yeah, we ought to know. It's like, why not? And what's being hidden, I guess, is the question.
Yeah. Again, there seems to be a lot of mystery concerning Lord Beall.
Yeah, for sure. Very cool, man. Very cool. Well, and super intriguing episode. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Oh, good.
For
Me
sure.
too.
Yeah, learned a lot. People can follow you on your YouTube channel. You've got Instagram.
Yeah, I think I'm on all the channels like you: Spotify, YouTube, Instagram, X, Facebook, TikTok. Yeah, so I'm there. Connect with me.
Very cool.
I've got a couple tours coming up. People can join me on. So you can go to megalithicmarvels.com/tours. So I do like 3 or 4 a year. And that's always fun to get out, explore, and just have a great time, whether it's Peru or Egypt, doing Cambodia here in early November. So that'll be awesome.
Nice. That'll be awesome. Keep up the great work, my friend. You're educating a lot of people and sharing a lot of really cool knowledge out there that people probably, a lot of the stuff, this is episode 77, I think, or 78. A lot of this stuff I had not heard. This is all fresh to me. A lot of really cool mysteries that I kind of now want to go back and research a little bit deeper. So thank you. Really appreciate your time. You flew all the way across the country to come out here. And I know you don't do a ton of other podcasts. So I appreciate you taking the time to come down here.
Oh, man.
Good trip.
Pleasure is all mine. Thank you so much for the invite. And it was a great trip. First time to this side of Florida, which was just a cool experience.
Yeah.
And man, so cool meeting you and Ryan and seeing the collection of the vases. Man, that was special. So thanks again.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Very cool. We'll wrap with that. Appreciate it, brother.
Okay.